Ha ha ha! Shocked you all. Shocked you all. We got in a little bit early. Hello, hello. Welcome to this week's midweek Geek. I am the old geek, and tonight I am joined by, in order of their arrival, Mage's Musings.
Hello.
Elfbait.
Hey.
And Omen Owl, who we've not seen on stream for a little while because work has been a little bit busy. But and chat have already been very, very active before we've got here. I was greeted by some very nice messages. For example, this one from Hungar. Thank you, Hungar. Followed by this one from Hungar. We wear it as a badge of honor, sir. We wear it as a badge of honor. And then Hungar's brother, Dungeon Master James. Thank you. It'll take more than $5 for me to escape the UK, but hey, it's graciously accepted. Thank you very much.
We're just waiting to see you do your Lone Wolf, Friday streams because they now have them in paperback for $8. Uh-oh.
Well, no, that's what I played last Friday.
Oh, I know.
That was good. That was good. And we have also in chat Jean's here nice and early. Halakar's here. Grumpy old Slan's lurking as well. General Nut, meh. Crafting Gamer and RW Bishop. And Dungeon Master James. Everything I do it for Erica. What's that a reference to? Anybody knows? Let me know.
Not sure.
I'm not using my new computer yet. It's all working. It's all set up. But what I need to do is rearrange all the desks and tables up in my attic so that I can have the two screens comfortably. And what it is, the space up there it's basically a loft space, which there's quite a lot of space. It's quite tall, with lots of headroom. But we've been using it for storage for a long time. We've had it boarded, so we can use it properly for storage. But there's not a lot of power supplies up there, and not a lot of lighting. So I need to get all those addressed. But that's where I'm going to be doing my gaming streams from, up in the loft. So just going to get the tables arranged so that what lighting there is sufficient. Run a few extension cables to whatever spot I choose to put the computer in. Currently, where it's sat, it is picking up the internet over wireless quite clearly. I was worried about that. I might have to run a cable up there. I don't know. We'll find all that out. We will find all that out. But at least the computer's working.
This is what we're going to expect from you, John. You can have nice ambient lighting with the little strips around you. You can have
eventually. In fact, DM James
YouTube trend, he has to have a purple light.
Oh,
DM James's $5 might buy me some of those little strips. I don't know. Well, we shall see.
He's going to do that. He's going to have that soft glow. He's going to come in with this pipe, and he's going to go over. And it's going to be like the old man.
Hello, welcome to Masterpiece Gaming.
Yeah,
Monster Piece Theater from Sesame Street. Cookie Monster in a smoking jacket.
Yeah.
What's up?
Hello, Ian. Hello, Squirrel Hermit. And who else has joined? Oh, Squirrel Hermit's given us. Oh, there we go. Squirrel Hermit has turned the nerds into a dorks for $2. Thank you, Squirrel Hermit.
We're evolving like Pokemon.
Oh no.
The intention is for it to be a little bit of a man cave. We were converting it into a man cave many moons ago before the kids arrived, and now it's just a dumping ground for old clothes, toys, all sorts of rubbish. So it
reclaim the man cave, man. Reclaim it.
Many moons ago.
Wait a minute. In a couple of years, she's going to have a whole other room available.
Well, yeah. Well. I mean, having to say that before my daughter was born, her bedroom was my man cave. But when she was little, we offered her a choice of rooms, and she picked that room, and that was my little sort of study area. And then our son came along and had to have our other room, and suddenly my study area just moved into the corner of our bedroom. And I've got this area about 6 foot wide and about 3 foot deep, and that's about it. That's all I've got.
Wait a minute. John is going to get a flag and plant it in the middle of Holly's room and say, "I claim this once again."
King and country. Hey, you guys can say that again.
Yeah,
we can. I mean, with house prices over here, it's going to be a while before she can afford to move out, to be honest. But yeah, she's 18 now. She'll be 19 next month. She's working, and in 2 years' time, she'll be earning more than either me or my wife ever have, because she's on a good career path already. So fair play to her. Good girl. It's just
good.
So what's going to happen is you're going to make her. We're all going to move in with you now.
Yeah, we're selling our house. You're buying a big house, and I'd like a little granddad flat in the garden.
Hey, if current trends continue.
Yeah. Hello, Kelsey. Is that Daniel in his weekend guys lurking, or is it really Kelsey? Right. Anyway, we do have a topic for tonight, but we've got to talk about the games we've had first before we start. Last Thursday's Call of Cthulhu I had to call off because it was last football match of Holly's season, and there was no way I was missing a fixture against the second place team in the table. Going into that fixture, we'd played 21, won 21. If we went over to Solihull Moors and beat them, we would finish off a perfect season, 22-22. They were second in the table, so it was always going to be a challenge. And they're the team that everyone in the division hates. So all the other teams were telling us to win, and we went over there and we won 6-0 to finish off a perfect season.
Why do we got to do it? Can't you guys play better and win? Yeah.
I won't say it wasn't a perfect season because we lost the cup final the week before against a team from a higher league, but there's no shame in that. The only game we lost was against a team that are moving into the professional ranks next season. And we were a team of under 21s, mostly teenagers that formed at the start of the year. So brilliant season. So that's why I went to watch that instead of winning Call of Cthulhu last Thursday. Friday stream was great. Saturday was just a day of OSE all day. Wasn't it, Sean?
It was indeed. I was only there for half of it.
You only here for half of it. But my paladin died. Poor Geekus, he died. Being brave. Oh well.
That's nice. Overrated. You got to learn to run.
He was nervous in his first foray into the dungeon the week before. But obviously he was buoyed by the fact that his god had protected him on his first foray. And all the monsters had missed because of his shiny armor. So they didn't miss this time. He died.
Those going back, I'll talk about high levels, but those low level initial Cavaliers where they're not allowed to run and things should have just made it so Cavalier was not a viable PC class.
It should have done, really, yeah. I mean, he's an OSE paladin. They are allowed to run in that, but he'd got a constitution of 4, and he got 4 hit points. He hit hard, but he was never going to have many hit points.
Well, for running, just meant that he'd fall down tired with a constitution of 4.
Yes. He had plate mail and a sword, and he hit pretty hard, but he just didn't last very long when he did get hit. No games Sunday. And then Monday was just a day of Call of Cthulhu. Played in Elfbait's scenario on Monday afternoon, and we had good fun. And then I ran for the first time ever ran a scenario that I've written in the evening, and the feedback I've had from my players matched exactly what I thought of it afterwards. In that it's maybe started a bit too slowly. I need to develop the hook to get people into it. But once they're into it, they said it was really good. But so needs a little bit of tweaking still. But first time I've ever written a scenario. First time I've ever run one that I've written in Call of Cthulhu, and it worked. So
cool.
It worked well, and it caused carnage. Cthulhu one shot is supposed to do. That's been my gaming. What about yours?
Well, mine overlaps with yours a lot this week.
It does.
So
yes,
we played in. I played in your game on Saturday afternoon. I was out at my mother's. It was her birthday, and I didn't make it home in time. But I had my laptop with me, so I just tuned in from my mother's spare room. So that was amusing. Although my character slept through half of that mission. Damn kobolds and their poison darts.
Oh yes. And that was a potentially very lethal encounter that the dice just about kept enough characters standing to complete it, to sort it out. But there was at any point had one or more crucially failed saves at the wrong times, it would have been all over.
My character is the group's only combat heavy. Guess who went down first to the sleeping draft? Right before the big fight. So so that was funny. Sunday we were supposed to play the latest chapter of Night Below, but once again players didn't show up, flaked out. So it was like, all right, gonna have to make the decision to pull the plug on that sort of splinter campaign. So I informed the players that with only 2 players committed to actually showing up, and the other 2, one person backed out permanently, and the other person was 50-50. It was like, all right, got to pull the plug on that. So Night Below recaps will be taking a slight hiatus until a new team ends up in Heronshire to pick up the mystery, which will happen. But that's good. That'll allow me to catch up on others and OSE. I'm 7 behind on OSE. Monday was, as you said, Call of Cthulhu. We played epic high action heroes in Eli's Call of Cthulhu game. The dice just favored us.
Oh yeah, I mean the dice and realistic armaments, but
so that was entertaining. Even the part where my gritty cop my city boy cop tried to walk across the ice of a frozen lake
and got taken into the air by a Wendigo.
Well,
yeah,
the chicken
squatch.
The chicken squatch, as we called them.
I guess. Well, it was a Wendigo derived creature, wasn't it?
It was not.
It was not.
No.
I thought it was.
It's actually based on a Native American folklore creature called the Stikini.
I didn't know that. Thanks for that. I was assuming you'd based it on. I don't know much about the Wendigo, so
No.
I assumed you based it on that.
Well, he had seeded hints because he had mentioned Wendigo in some of the writings.
Yes,
but
no, that was a good scenario. I like you guys played it. You played your characters really well. For pre-gens, I really enjoyed it that way. The way that you did, and just like informing your play style from your character sheets was. And had the dice gone differently, it could have been a very different scenario.
Oh, absolutely.
But nobody got hit with sanity checks except for that one time where Gingerbeard's character got paralyzed for a turn and Shield of Eyes dropped his gun.
That was a luck check, wasn't it?
Oh, the luck check was the sanity effect was him dropping it. The luck check was I kept having him roll luck to see if he could find it in the rocks at his feet in the middle of the night. So.
Hungar says we're nerds once again.
We're nerds. Yes, Hungar has. We are officially nerds from now on because Hungar has said so. Sorry, Squirrel.
Until someone ups the $5.
Yeah. On the gaming front, after Elf Bates' game, Monday night was my ongoing 5e campaign, and they had finished up a scenario last time, and since I got the Roll20 download of Lost Mine of Phandelver, which I had never run, and since it's such a highly regarded 5th ed module, I want to see it. I want to see it play out. So I've kind of funneled them in that direction. I'm not going to use the term railroad, but they had all the choices and they chose to go that way. So
it's pleasantly simple and generic, and they've got plenty of places to go. It's easy to run. It's a good starter. I wouldn't say
from what I've read,
say it's great, but it is a good starter.
Phandelver.
And
what I really like about it is that because I got it was last year actually, Roll20 had Lost Mine as a free giveaway if you claimed it by a certain day. because I have a Plus account, and it was a matter of, oh, I'll get this now. When do I run it? And it's like now all the maps are pre-made, so I've got the adventure ready to go for a very long time. It's running on Roll20 and getting all the maps and everything is a hell of a lot of work.
Yeah.
And then I played OSE last night in my regular Tuesday game. Played, not ran. Which
damn
squirrel hermit.
Oh, squirrel.
Oh no! Wow.
That's mighty squirrel, mighty. We are dorks again. We are dorks. All hail dorkdom.
That's okay. I'm all right with that.
So this dork and his crew in the OSE group came upon a big sleeping behemoth, and we're all low level, and my character's third, and we have one other third level. Everybody else is first, and we're like sitting there role playing the situation where there's a sleeping monster on top of a pile of treasure, and we're like, and the one player's just talking normal voice, and I'm like, whisper, don't wake it. And so we all do the rest of the role playing in whispers. And it's like, yeah, we think we're just going to back away casually and not wake this thing up, because the DM described it as being 3 stories tall, coiled up like a snake. So it was like, yeah, we're not beating this thing. Let's just leave. So that was our epic tail between our legs moment. We got no treasure, but we lived.
So you've had lots of gaming as well.
I had lots of gaming this weekend, yeah.
What about you, Omanal? Any gaming?
I do GURPS. GURPS is not my favorite system. The system's fine once you actually get running, but I realized that, to me, part of the fun of an RPG is making characters, and it's not as fun. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I mean, you think like, oh, all the possibilities, but GURPS is not a fun game to make characters. As you're going through it, a lot of stuff needs to be automated. I think that's one of the things that, if anyone's going to make their own RPG, like, make it interesting, make it fun. I mean, we talk about life path systems. Traveler has it. Of course, Conan has it. Yep. Wait. The other hand is Dork. I didn't see if you did that.
I can't write with my left hand, so I've written Dork on the palm of my hand.
Oh.
Oh, wait a minute. Whenever he does this, it's the sleeper has awakened, Dork. Anyway.
Go on, God.
Oh wow! Hey, you know what? You can afford the upgrade now up into your stream. Actually, at this point, you can afford more game bucks. And Conan's on sale. Until
the money's going to the new man cave he was talking about earlier.
No, I know he's good. At this point, it's going to be, well, do I want ficus or do I want this type of plant?
Well, I've got the Games Expo, the UK Games Expo this weekend. And I will no doubt head into the bring and buy section where all the secondhand stuff is, and I will plunder to my heart's content.
I love a
one
good
year
bring
I
and
spent one year I spent about £300 in the bring and buy. I must have made 5 trips to my car with stuff.
Oh no!
That was when the family were getting into board games, so I bought a lot of board games there. I'm going purely for RPG stuff this year.
Your children just don't love you anymore. I joke about it because I have a bunch of board games. My son will only play like 3 with me, and they all last. I have some that are like 6 hours it takes to play, and he's going, I don't want anything over half an hour. I'm like, well, that narrows it down a lot.
We've got about 40 board games.
I play games where it can take that long to set up.
My wife likes board games, but there's when we've got about 40 there, there's only 2 she'll play, though. 2 or 3 she'll play. She just likes to play the same ones over and over again. Whereas I'm like, play another one tonight. Play another one. Well, anyway.
For all.
Right. We're going to get on to our topic, and that is high-level games. And obviously, it's going to be the focus is going to be on D&D because that's what we know mostly. I mean, I've played a fair bit of Merp now, but the highest level characters any of them reached in that is 2nd level. So I haven't experienced high level play. Now, high level gaming. I remember when I first got into D&D. I used to buy a lot of modules, and the first modules I bought I got a mid-level module with my expert box set, Isle of Dread. I bought Master of the Desert Nomads X4 for expert D&D, which isn't high level, but really does suit sort of level sort of 7, 8, 9 at least. So it's upper medium. And then it was pretty much across to AD&D. I did buy Danger at Dunwater, which is a low level. I think that was my next one. But all my modules I bought after that were pretty much in order. Were Against the Giants, Descent into the Depths of the Earth, Vault of the Drow. And because obviously when I was 12 or 13, I was thinking, yeah, I'll put characters through this. But what I learned when I was running a campaign more recently is it's so much more satisfying to put characters through those sort of adventures that the players have crafted over years and years and years of play. Because the first time I ran against the Giants, my friends just played the pre-gens at the end and didn't really care what happened to them. So the whole style of play is completely different when they characters that have been loved over years and years and years are being played through these high-level adventures because they want to stay alive. And these high-level adventures are difficult. And the whole approach is different. But ultimately, those adventures have never really played quite as magnificently as I've imagined them. Some of those great set piece combats you imagine from them can be over far too quickly because of the power levels sometimes of the characters when they get to that level. It's very hard to judge how it's all going to play out. So what I just want to know before we start, what are your experiences of running high level games? I've only ever run a lot of high level adventures with proper campaign characters that have been nurtured over time once. And I must say I much enjoyed them. I much preferred the mid-levels. But what are your own experiences of high-level play?
Well, I'm somewhat similar to you. Like organically getting them there has only happened a couple of times. In my second ed game, the group got to around level 10, 11. But, you know, they're playing open world sandbox. They were playing how they wanted. So they didn't set up land. They didn't do any domain stuff. They just remained adventuring. So this type of game didn't really change all that much, just their ability to survive it. But I've never run any of the high-level modules, like the known high-level modules, because I don't want to just run it. I don't want to say, okay, here's Tomb of Horrors, let's play. I want characters to get to that. I wouldn't play campaign characters of Tomb of Horrors, but you know what I mean. But there are, I mean, the Against the Giants series it can be played as a campaign series. Right.
And it's very different in tone to Tomb of Horrors.
Well, of course.
Tomb
of Horrors is a competition module as well.
Exactly.
I'm just trying to think. What was the highest? The highest published campaign I think I did was the Desert Desolation. For my second ed game, I ran the group through the Desert of Desolation as a full trilogy. They started in the 5th to 6th level range, and I think by the time they were done, everybody was in the 9th or 10th level range, maybe higher. But that was also my more or less my campaign closer. I was shutting down my second ed campaign at the time. It was the big finale, where 2 steps prior to the big finale, it led into the big finale, which one of your favorites was the Quest for the Heartstone, which the face. I had seeded it all together in a narrative way that I think you would have appreciated, but where the Quest for the Heartstone was that whole dungeon was all constructed from the mind of a madman, right? As opposed to
not
being an
from
part of the world.
Big Plastic Toys trademark.
No, they encountered no toys. They just encountered deadly threats. Anyway, so so and then the Dungeon Land and Land Beyond the Match Mirror modules, I guess, as well.
They are nasty.
Yeah, they are, but they were fun. I enjoyed them, except for the one guy who died. He got
Only
upset.
one. I lost an entire party in Dungeon Land.
Well,
8
I had
PCs.
I had played it in such a way that characters there who died didn't know they were dead, right? So the idea is they're trapped there. But he kept going, not knowing he was dead. And then at the end, when everybody found the portal home, he was forced to stay and he couldn't leave, and he got really upset.
Oh,
Yeah. Aw.
so what about Elfbait? Have you done much high level stuff?
I've done some, but admittedly, a lot of that was we started out at higher levels. I don't think I've
Right.
ever really played a character up to a high level. Most of our games we stopped playing after about 10th or so level.
See, I'd class 10th level as high level.
Well, and and I guess I'm maybe thinking about 10th, thinking about high levels as a higher level, like 14, 15, 16, something like that. Yeah, because usually with our group, we got bored. We would get bored with the campaign, not because it wasn't good, but we all had just terminal gamer ADHD, and we wanted to go on to I had an idea the other day when I was standing in line for pizza. Let's play it, or whatever, And so we would jump around a lot of games, or a lot of times we would take breaks from a game to play something else, and then never come back to the other one. So most of the gaming I've done at higher levels, we started there. We went for a big long bit in AD&D where we would just start at 6th level. So our characters would have some meat under them because we didn't want to play through those low level, oh look, let's go kill the rats in the cellar again, kind of adventures.
See, you do need a certain level of buy-in to do that, I find, because I struggle to get attached to a character if I start at high level.
Oh, yeah, none of us had that problem because usually we came to the table with a concept in mind, and we were like, "Oh, I have a character that I want to build," and then we would use those levels to really flesh out the character, and we'd kind of talk to each other, whoever was the DM at the time, and say, "Okay, and during my adventures, could I have found this?" And kind of a thing, a lot of times we would use those charts in the back of Fiendfolio for NPC adventuring groups to just determine what magic items that we started out with. Because, they'd have like a 6th level character should have this or could potentially have this. All right, my character's 6th level. All right, just roll. And it was just, we very rarely did we ever take a character from level 1 all the way up to 10 and stuff like that. Except for in the earliest days, my group got really tired real fast of playing through like the first 3 levels. So we would start 4 to 6 usually a lot of times. So
I'm the opposite. I never get sick of the lower levels. Right
now, other game systems I've played from the beginning up to insanely powerful characters who have no business doing anything. But so. Superhero games, playing in Star Wars to where you get enough dice on your character, you're like Boba Fett, psh, Darth Vader, pah!
Amateurs, children, children with glow sticks.
Boba Fett was the most overrated bounty hunter ever. I mean, he was taken out by a blind man. Now it's not.
Well, to be fair, he was taken out by an equipment malfunction, but there are other games that are just so power creepy that high level play is kind of hard to pick out. Like playing Rifts, for example, your character starts with a giant battle suit. Okay, well, what is high level? Yeah.
Well, yeah. Rifts is a different entity. While you're more competent in combat, you can take on really tough monsters at the beginning, without really having to be high level.
I mean,
and
my little Kung Fu Panda character that I was running around with could fight mecha with his bare hands. But
it got kind of ridiculous.
Palladium
was one of those that I liked a lot when I first started it, and then when Rifts came out, I'm like, I'm out. I'm done.
But like playing Marvel superheroes, for example, I mean, what exactly is high level in a superhero campaign?
I look at, well, in that one, you probably look at someone like Thor versus Iron Man. for those.
Yeah, I tended to run lower. I always have had a thing for the underdog character. So in Marvel games, used to always kind of annoy me. One friend of mine that I would always play with, he'd have a Thor level character or something like that. Upper level X-Men level type character or whatever, or Avengers level character, and I'm running around with
the Wasp.
Yeah, I've got some reasonable power level character, or even Spider-Man, who's not overly powerful. He's got a good tight set of powers, half of which are gimmicks he's built. Yeah, because
I want to come to that about in a bit about
disparate power levels.
Disparate power levels and whether power levels make characters interesting or not. I mean, that's one topic I want to come on to. Just want to go on.
Squirrel.
I haven't got enough fingers to write geeklings across my fingers.
Well, he's got two hands now.
I can't write on me. I can't write on my other hand because I can't write with my left hand.
Well, what about your eyelids? Right, geek, and then lings on your eyelids there.
I have to work tomorrow morning.
Oh no!
Don't want to spend half an hour in the bathroom tomorrow morning scrubbing pen off my head or something. Cheers, Squirrel Hermit. So, Omanal, you, as we know, you are a reformed power gamer. We were talking about power creep, and I thought Omanal's going to be talking next. That's absolutely perfect segue into Omanal.
Well, I talk about that. It's one thing to create characters. I remember running one and did that's when I found out, oh, look, 1 XP equals 1 gold piece. 1 gold piece equals 1 EXP. And then when they get higher up, dragons become trivial. Up to the point that I really jacked up the power level of dragons that even 40th level characters were running from them. And I stopped them at 40th level because you can find enough treasure literally in a dragon's lair to almost give everyone an extra level if they move through.
But you got to be able to get it out of there.
Yeah. You know what? When you're high enough, it's trivial. I mean, a lot of stuff starts becoming trivial at high levels. Then you start doing plain stuff. And I think really what it comes down to, it's not that the idea isn't cool. It really, a lot of the stuff that the really interesting monsters really come into their own when you start getting up into those high levels. However, as a DM, they don't make the game really that much more fun. And and then when we talk about power creep, and I'm looking at not from the players. The player loved it. The player was like, "Oh, that's great! I got my 40th level cleric and my 40th level mage, and blah blah blah." I said, "Okay, that's fine." But as a DM, I'm like, "Man, I'm not having any more fun creating encounter designs than anyone else." And my friend says the exact same thing about his 5e campaign. He's not having fun doing it, and I think that's really the death knell of most high level campaigns is the DM gets bored. Now I know that some people like Shadow and Sun does enjoy. He's like, well, I want to just keep going and running with them. I said, yeah, but part of what I love about the game is the gritty. Talking about a lot is the grittiness. The can you make it through? I don't want to die instantly, which is why I do like starting at 3rd level because the 1st level is just so boring. It's like, oh, we'll run from everything. But
I like 1st level.
As a DM, I always find it fun trying to come up with interesting and unique ways to make 1st level adventures count. But
well, I mean, the problem is that in some cases is that the monsters aren't doing 1 to 2 hit points; they're doing much higher. I think it's great to have players, but so many players, and I agree with it. You've been through 1st level so many times, guys. Let's just start at 3rd so we can actually go on and do some more heroic crap. But 40th. But like I said, it's when they got up there and you're getting high level spells, everything becomes trivial for the most part. Then all you're doing is you're just ramping up the monsters. The monsters take longer to kill. Part of D&D, the enjoyment of it is getting new magic items. All right, now you got +6 plate. If you look at the Unearthed Arcana, they should having +6s. I don't think it made a better game. That's part of it. Is I think when we talk high level, once you get to that 8th, 12th level, that's kind of the sweet spot high level because you can still, one is the hit points still go up a little bit. You don't get these massive power jumps that you do at the lower levels, but you also don't get wish and a lot of other things. And so it just starts becoming like, all right, let's start bringing it down. I had a friend of mine, I think he fought 400 X-Fart. I used to have him, I had to jump him, rip off his armor, but because he got one attack per level, they just went down like butter. And it's like, okay, that's kind of
Mook
cool.
roll for the win.
Oh yeah, well it's that one attack per level. That's
Per
really
level,
cool. No, I think that sometimes what it comes down to is I want an epic adventure that gives them a big challenge without it feeling artificial.
Yeah.
Perfect examples, like we were talking, we talked about that, but if you ever played the mega modules, which was T1 through T4, and then of course it went to Assault Against the Slavers or Scourge of the Slave Lords, and then it went to the what was it, the Scourge of the giant one, and if you did that as a whole campaign, which I think was very ambitious, but at one point they're like, 9th level fighters are attacking you. And I went, well, wait a minute, 9th level are the levels of kings. The system breaks down for what makes sense, especially from a first edition perspective, where I'm going, okay, a 3rd level may be a battle-hardened veteran. The first level character is a battle-hardened veteran, but 3rd level is someone that's seen some real stuff over years. And
of course, we're talking about old versions of D&D here with AD&D and Basic and what have you, and 2nd edition, which had that sort of expectation that sort of once you got to level 10, 11, 12, that's considered high level. But then it came, like 3rd edition came out, and the power scaling really sort of bit into the nature of the system. I don't know. I've so little experience with 4th edition. I can't really talk about that one. But what I found with 5th edition is when you get to the classic old mid levels, level 5, that's when you start feeling like you would be at higher levels in older editions. And I've DM'd and played in campaigns in 5th edition, which have gone to level 10, 11, 12, and you almost feel it's a nightmare for the DM at those sort of levels, because it's so hard to keep a challenge organic.
Your wizards have the spells to really bypass a lot of puzzles, or not all the role playing, more role play type things can often be bypassed or mitigated through a lot of the magic or even the character abilities.
Yes.
Well, I think that requires a complete shift in style, though.
Yeah.
Once you're at those high levels, the occasional adventure module or whatever will be a thing, but you need to really lean into the politics and the domain play and running kingdoms, and that's a skill that has to be learned. I'm not sure I could do it.
But you have to have player buy-in is the other problem, and that's I think the hardest part. It's not that we could do it, but in the 1st edition, it really encouraged domain play over time. That was kind of I made 9th level, now I get to do this. The later editions, it's kind of, even the modules seem to go from like level 1 to 20. And my friend said, first off, he didn't like the fact that the players advanced so quickly. And then his complaint right now, and again, I know that the Elfbane have argued about this, but I always use him as my normie DM reference, because that's about the only game he's ever played. He does this, and he goes, my 8th level players are taking out CR15 monsters. He said and then it either comes down to a TPK or a cakewalk. And he wants something a little bit more in between. And then I understand that. I think that's, if you really want to play high level, I think there are better systems to do it than D&D. And I think that sometimes, I think this is where Murph probably did it right, if I can remember. In that 1 through 10th level, you're very powerful and competent at 10th level, but you're not the same huge jumps that you get every level that happens in other systems. It's just like having an experienced character in Call of Cthulhu that's not totally insane can still be taken out, and so your threats don't have to scale the same way. And I think that's a, from a DM standpoint, it's not fun unless you're already playing a superhero game. And even then, we're still talking about, and I'm sure we've all seen this, at a certain point, we've got to go watch the old movies than the new movies, because his power scale is a bit lower. You can feel the stakes are that without it being overwhelming and just saying, well, okay, you lost me. You jumped the shark at this point. So.
I mean, this is where I want to come on to the first talking point that I've got written down. It's pretty much what Kabuki Kid has said here, being overpowered like that is fun for a minute. You get to try out those abilities, but it ceases to become fun pretty quickly. Certainly in my experience, when you realize just how trivial a lot of typical encounters are. And it's very easy for a DM to burn out very quickly trying to come up with challenges. Plus, I find that often higher level characters are all too much defined by their abilities. You see this in going back to the superhero comment, where how interesting is Superman?
He can be very
He's really
interesting in the hands of a good writer.
Well, that's the thing. It takes a writer to make him interesting.
I'm going to bring the other
He's
point.
not interesting in his own right.
Superman, part of the problem I think with Superman is look at unless you're playing 5 Supermen all together, they're kind of.
It's okay. DC has those.
Yeah. Well, so does Marvel.
Shazam.
But my point is that you can't get an ensemble cast, which is what Jillia Party is. You want people relatively close, and when we talked about I forgot what we call it, but the classes having their own role, those role designations. You get one of two things to do. It doesn't make sense, or that's part of I think the issue that when you get those high levels, it's not that interesting. You always have to one up yourself every time, and that gets exhausting. And then in certain cases, D&D being the example, it's either it starts becoming, oh, you will instant death at -6. Okay, well that or guess what? It has 1,200 hit points. How long are we going to sit here and do the battle? Like, all right, you know what? I'll go somewhere else. I know that the people like to talk about an hour combat. That's fine if it's tactically different. But if it just starts becoming sling spell slash where you're just trying to knock off health, not that much fun. That's why I always thought the Trask was a bad monster. I didn't find it. I never found the Trask interesting myself.
It's not a particularly interesting monster, is it?
Well, you're not meant to use it regularly. It's a once per campaign thing at best, right?
Even still, though, it's not very inspiring. It's stall hit points and resistance. But no. Yeah.
I think that's part of the the Trask is a cool idea, but it just never implements out because you're going, well, okay, I'll just fly away. I'll just do this. And it tactically, it's not that interesting. Whereas, to be fair, when you start looking at the Drow as a manipulative, evil force, okay, I have aggravated the High Priestess. She's not going to be fighting, but the assassins are going to come out and the things in the background. And if you have a domain play, then that starts coming out. What's taking out my guards at night? What's doing this? And we now see the dark elf. The Drow is going out there. Okay, now we have to go rally. You don't need high level for that. Now I said is 7th level is fairly high level in certain cases, which is really cool. But man, the driver is just a fantastic monster, but it doesn't have to be 18th level for everything.
But the Tarask multiclassed into an assassin isn't working with the Drow.
Assassin Tarask.
But to go on with the point, I mean, you've got, in terms of his abilities, Superman isn't particularly interesting, where someone like Spider-Man is, because as Elfbait said earlier, I think it was his abilities compared to the likes of Thor and people like that are very, very moderate.
Yeah. By
superhero standards, he's a mid-level character.
Yeah, and if you were being played by an actual player, if we were to take what the character has done in the comics, and his player is clearly playing him really well because Spider-Man has managed to take out every power level of character in the Marvel universe. He's managed to stop the Juggernaut, didn't kill him or anything, but Spider-Man is a character who uses his wits along with his powers to find ways to tackle even way overpowered enemies. Some guy is shooting lightning bolts at him and stuff. The only thing keeping him safe is the fact that he's got a spidey sense that allows him to dodge a little bit better. And in the tabletop version, he's just got a better than better than normal chance to avoid those shots. But if he gets hit, he's gonna get nailed. He doesn't have a body armor or anything like that. He's got good resistances and stuff like that. But again, if you were to look at the character in the comics, and as somebody was being played, that player is clearly having fun getting into that character and making him interesting.
But that's the crux
yes.
of it, right? It's not the powers, it's not the abilities, it's the person. And
Exactly.
that applies at any level. Now, if you're playing high level play and you're really doubling down on the role play, you'll find that not a lot changes. It just, your characters are in a different social position than they were when they were struggling level 1 adventurers. But that changes the scene, that changes the game. If they do go out on a mission, there's more imperative to it. There's more purpose.
But there are
usually.
Come on, sorry.
I was going to say, usually the adventure will be for a greater purpose other than just to acquire wealth, although it can still be wealth. But you have more to play with. And I think that can be really, really interesting. Now I'm speculating, of course, 'cause I've never had anybody get to that level. Like, we're talking level 15 or whatever, saying where we are lords of our domain. Even my, group that made 11th, 12th level, they had no interest in domain play. They just wanted to adventure with their nice, safe abilities.
And I'm going to bring up one other thing, which is it begins to show where the system begins to break down.
Yes.
That's the other part too, is I'm not saying everything's perfect and I have my own issues with it, but I think Exalted does a good job if you really want to play those really high demigod level players for some of the powers and what goes on in there. However, there's that huge political aspect that the players have to buy in. But I think when you start, I hate saying this, D&D in most cases is go down the dungeon, kill some things, and bring loot out. That's what we played as a kid. That's what we were for. And we can include some storylines and stuff in there, which helps. But it's not the same of... and then at a certain point, we would like to have the globe-spanning, Gith Yankee, with red dragons coming in. Okay, but where do you go from there? That's the other problem that gets you. Then it just feels...
to continue on,
sure,
real quick on Geek's Superman example, and to tie it into what Sean was saying about how it's the player, you'll notice that in those really powerful characters, early in the comic series career, it is a lot of very simple storyline. Superman meets guy, beats him up, runs into a power that he can't overcome. It's later in those really powerful characters' lives, sort of like in high-level character play, that they often start to get into those stories that involve their personal lives, the greater universe, things that require them to troubleshoot outside their power base. And it really does come down to playing the character and what you can play with that character rather than just the character's mechanics. And I think that's what the key to make high-level play enjoyable. I did a little bit of domain play when I was a kid, and that ended badly for all of our characters. We one of the players had a claim to, I think, Nyrond or Furiondi or something in Greyhawk, and so we were all of our characters had got up to this point where we had our individual domains, and we were allying with people and making, buying, paying off mercenaries and stuff like that. And we had this big plan to go ahead and take whatever kingdom back, and everything went wrong. There was betrayal, there was bad communication, there were weather delays for the naval portion of the invasion, and it went horribly wrong, and all of our characters ended up pretty much dead or destitute. So
I'm going to mention one other thing, though. Is like you talked with superheroes, and we all talk about Superman. If you actually look Superman early on, he didn't have flying. He could jump. He could jump a building, and they just kept giving him more and more powers. As they gave him more and more powers, then they had to do the same thing with the enemies, and that really prevented them from going. This is one of the reasons I like Batman. Is Batman, while he has his little tricks, he still has this thing through stuff. Same thing with Spider-Man.
Although Batman at this point in his career suffers from about the same problem as Superman, because the trope now with Batman is he can beat anybody.
Yeah, he's a genius. Yeah, he's got
a contingency for everybody, so it's not really ever a question whether or not Batman's going to win. I mean, the most dynamic, dramatic thing they ever did was break his back. Back in the 90s.
But
that's a setback. He walked it off.
But
he got better because he's back. But
Well, that's one of the things that you have to do is you have to almost reimagine the characters and really bring them down in power level.
I mean, it
so that
flat
you
out
can work.
took the death of Superman to make the character interesting again.
I mean, yeah, there's some of that, and then people are like, oh, we're going to do this, but I noticed that when I was going through it, it's like, okay, but yeah, that's one of the things I said is it really does show off, and I played what was it? I forget what it was called. I guess it was Gemstone or whatever it was, and you could tell where the system began to break down, and where for a computer game, things did become more interesting. It was actually more fun to fight at the 10th through 15th level than it was to fight the really high levels. Now all people want to do is get more power and more power. Then I look at do this, and then they had to figure out new ways to kill you, and it really didn't feel as risky or anything else. Which which bugged me is you want to say, okay, how do I deal with this? And like we said, the players have to really get into saying, okay, we're going to evolve into a different type of game. And then in some cases, like, well, you know what, if we're going to move up, let's go play Heroes or the old Marvel superhero game or something in there. So you can get that feel. But I know for 5e, I don't think that anyone really enjoys that. The other part is, we're talking about high level. Let's not forget unmaking of magic items for magic users and doing that. At that point, then the players really increase that. And then we're saying, okay, now I have to deal with, we're now flooding the market with gold. We're now flooding the market with magic items. We're doing these things. Your game really begins to get out of whack for what you went into it for. And I think in some cases, this is where I'd rather do a Warhammer Fantasy role play if we're going to get it to power. You can become more powerful, but you're still very vulnerable, which is one of the things I like about stuff like that, without a feeling like everything's being cheated. Yeah, I mean, I agree with Alucard. Never cared for superheroes. I was never one that did, though. To be honest, I did enjoy the 90s cartoons. But if you notice, Superman, even though he was super, he had to have a competent villain. He had to have this. Lex Luthor is not in the same power level as Superman. However,
there's one thing that Superman always had that I always enjoyed, and one of the is that he was always vulnerable to magic. Like, he had no resistance to magic. And one of the greatest moments in comics I remember is an issue where this little girl vampire manages to hypnotize Superman, and she's going in to do the bite thing, and Batman shows up and just stakes her through the back, with his pole, and Superman is like just aghast. You killed a little girl. He's like, the world can't survive a Superman vampire. And he just goes. He's like, he's done.
I mean, I think.
Okay, keep going. Keep going.
No, I was
going to change tack slightly, but yeah.
No, I was just going to add on to that. I mean, the high level play, it's like any game, though. Like you have to be ready for it and prep for it. Any group that gets to that point, like we've seen comments saying, we just get to level 10, 12 and then retire your characters, which is fine. Then you just keep playing the form of game you like. But I do think that, we're talking D&D. I mean, you guys mentioned other things, but for me, D&D, I think the system is there. There's enough in there to give you those options for high level play if you're willing to change the style of play. If you embrace the domain play, embrace the idea that your characters are now gods among men, and how would that affect the world? A lot of that is playing the world as opposed to playing your characters, if that makes any sense. With the DM who's both ready for that domain level play, but also is got their finger on the pulse of how the world is changing around these characters' presence, the characters that are this powerful. Because what does that mean into the world? You've got a 18th level paladin who's a mega hero, and what does that mean? What are his enemies planning? What are they doing? That high level mage, who's keeping an eye on that guy who can literally bend reality? All of that can be extraordinarily interesting, but it does take a shift in mindset, and it does take more prep. Mm-hmm. So it's a matter of, do you want to play that, or do you want to just, okay, let's retire at 10 and start back at level 1 and we're adventurers again?
I think that there's another aspect to that, which is when you start doing a domain level play, your characters are not really gaining levels. That's the intention. Is you're done with your adventuring. You're now going into the background, and that's where, to me, that's where you play your multiple level troop style play. Which is,
Or you play your henchman. Yeah.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
your character's son.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what you play. Whereas in the background, okay, what's our magic user doing? Oh, he's creating stuff in the tower. He's doing this, but I think that's where it works out. But as far as a mechanical aspect, I think it begins to break down very well from that. It's like, okay, you might get there. If you remember the old Greyhawk, and they even said this in one of the books. I can't remember exactly where. Why are they 9th level? They said they're 9th level to prevent them from dying from just any cheap trick. It's like, oh, you can't just slash them and they're automatically dead. That's okay. That said, is it creates some weird things whenever you're hearing about so and so died from a knife, the knife wound. So that's where I think that the system began to break down, and that's part of the reason actually going to other systems is I wanted to say, okay, I want something more gritty, or I want something where you're just not. You can hit me 14 times with that dagger before I actually die.
I think when you get into high level play with D&D, though, you really like Sean is saying, you really do have to kind of change your outlook on what your dungeon crawls are not a thing really anymore. However, there is that we must go to the plateau of Leng and find the ancient temple of such and such to get the artifact that will stop the evil god from coming through. I mean, those can be fun to play too. And I think that's really, if you look at if you read about some of the old classic characters that Gygax and crew, and even Ed Greenwood and all that, played, that's kind of what a lot of their characters were getting onto as I got up in level. They were taking on gods, and they were, or demigods like Vecna and Ayas and stuff like that. They were going to those places that no mere adventurer would go, because you might be wandering into a god's realm to steal something. We must go get a leaf off the such and such tree that's in the happy hunting grounds. And
Well, I mean, a perfect example is the way they portrayed Elminster, which I think he was they gave him stats one time. He was an 18th level magic user or something like that.
He's multi-classed too, I think, but.
Oh, well.
Yeah. I think he's partially bard too.
Yeah, he was dual class. But when you start looking what he did is he really went over into, they started playing him more as the sage to give advice than the
at a certain point, your high-level wizards end up in their tower just kind of being the guy who is the go-to for the other younger adventurers.
But I think that's part of when we're talking about this. And if they do go adventure, it's their one last hurrah. We're all going to get the band back together. We're going to go out for our final tour, and we're going to go up in a glorious puff of smoke kind of thing. And if you make it, then you become elevated to Saint Cuthbert level demigod.
Yeah. Like it or not, the Dragonlance campaign does take the players up to a pretty decent point where they're getting ready to have to take on a god. Yeah.
Right. I just wanted to dive in, just so coming back to a point regarding the role playing. And one thing I want to say is, when you first start out, you start out with usually a very simple character sheet with not much on it. What happens as you gain levels? You add to your character sheet. Your character sheet gets busier, more powers, more magic stuff, more things you can do. Blah 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 blah. What happens what is the natural thing that happens with a lot of players when the character sheet contains more? They spend more time looking at that character sheet.
Yep.
They rely more on what is on the character sheet than the role playing or the environment. So I would argue it takes a very skillful and committed player to keep up the same level of imagination and role play that you see at low level, to continue that through to high level.
It absolutely does. And I mean, my mid-level example, when we were talking about the Night Below campaign, their 5th level, the one guy playing the cleric, he never comes prepared. He never looks over his spells. He'll sit there wasting 15, 20 minutes. Oh, what spells should I take? It's like, why don't you have a default list? And that's at mid-levels. I can't imagine the nightmare at high levels. You have to be on the ball. Yeah, absolutely. You can't play casually as you advance in level. But that's a more or less a player buy-in thing. Players need to understand that as you get high in level, that requires more homework, more keeping.
I'm going to mention one other thing though, and this is where I think D&D failed in that aspect, which was when they put in skills and proficiencies. That slowed the game down a lot when you didn't need that before. This is why I think BX is so good from that aspect. Oh, okay. Just roll. And then, we can determine your difficulty depending on what we think your profession is. I think there's that aspect of freeform, let's move it through. But
honestly, this is why I like the Vancian magic system as well, because players will whine, well, so how come I have to fix my spells? It's like, well, when you have 18 to 20 of them because you're at a high level, just having them written out where you can just strike them out, it's such easy tracking. It's unbelievably easy tracking, as opposed to having a free slot and then okay, I've got a slot, now let's look over my list and see what I can cast. It's like, no, you have it right in front of you, what you can do, and then you just make a note, it's been used, done.
Having played freeform magic systems too, like Mage and stuff, that is a good example of just how much it bogs down to not have something like a Vancian magic system. Because in Mage, I don't know if you're familiar with it, you just have ranks in spheres of magic that have examples of what you can do at those levels. Every time you try to do a magical effect, it's I want to do this using this level of such and such, and in combination of this level of such and such, and then the GM has to adjudicate every use,
time. Wow.
Unless you have rotes, which are things that your character does all the time. It can be cool, and you can get cool effects like, all right, I'm in the cyberpunk World of Darkness setting, and I'm going to go ahead and use matter magic and life magic to make metal claws pop out of my hands, even though I don't have cybernetics, and I'm going to pass them off as cybernetics. Cool, you can do that, but again, everything has to be adjudicated, because in that game also you have other factors like, is what you're doing too overt to where it actually attracts the static reality and causes paradox? Because the more outlandish your effect, the harder it is to justify.
Well, you know what though, is I didn't mind Mage because it was kind of, how do I want to put this? Magic was used more rarely than just flinging it out a lot.
So paradox, because if you threw a fireball, it's hard to explain fireball as something that can occur in the world.
Well, no. But I meant is that they tend not to cast all these spells, and they tend to think about it, and it tends to be slower. So I didn't mind Mage. I really did like Mage, but it requires a lot of creativity. What I've noticed,
it's also in a game setting that's primarily role-playing focused. I mean, most of the World of Darkness, even Werewolf with its, which is even on record as having been written to cater to the D&D crowd that was avoiding the World of Darkness universe. The Werewolf is very much the fighty, World of Darkness game. But anyways, what I was saying about I was just kind of an aside on freeform magic. I've played it. I agree with Sean that having a spell list and set effects is a lot better for gameplay, especially when it's going to be used frequently.
Yes, I agree with frequently.
Mage works well because you might cast one or two spells in an entire session, and a lot of times you're just getting by on your other skills. Yeah.
Well, and sometimes it's more subtle. It's a subtle magic, right? But I think, here's the other point that comes to it. When players advance too quickly, they don't learn their character or their spells. It's not that they don't mind free form magic. The problem that I have with it is, especially in 5e and some of these others, if you're going from first to second, all of a sudden your spell numbers have doubled within the first 3 levels. And if it hasn't taken you a large number of game sessions to understand what your character does, and the same thing when you go up to by 5th and then 7th.
Even as a fighter, it happened to me in one campaign I was in. The GM was doing milestoning and it was keeping everybody at the same level. and I had to miss a lot of sessions, and I came back after one absence, and we had gone up 2 levels. I'm like, wait a minute. I just got those abilities. I didn't get a chance to use them, and now I got to figure out what I have now on all the new stuff on my character sheet. Now that's an extreme example, but yeah, I mean, if you're going up fast, and you don't get to use your stuff, it's not just the wizards; it's any character class, especially in 5th edition where they're so ability heavy.
Well, I think 5e is a more egregious example for exactly for that very reason. Whereas I didn't mind it so much if you take something like Exalted, because you might get 1 charm. Okay, you only get 1, but a player with a high intelligence that finds a new spell book now suddenly may find out that he has twice as many spells as what he did previously, and now all of a sudden he's like, oh well, how does this one work? Well, how does this one work? And you're right, unless the player is very experienced using that, and I think that's where the slow leveling really helps especially at the low levels. That matters. But man, but like you said, I've seen too many players that get the choice paralysis. And they're just like, oh, what do I do? All right, I'll be honest, I'm kind of the opposite, which I'm going, okay, I already have my decision. Unless something else comes up, as soon as I do my action, I've already thought of what my next action is going to be. But that's hard to do that. And then, like we were talking about, high level suddenly slows the game down. Let me flip through all my different spells. What does this card do? And especially,
you spend longer in combat as well at high levels, because combats become big, massive set pieces with sacks of hit points.
In D&D, at least.
Yeah. It's D&D, yeah.
I will say this about superhero games: is superhero games, at least in Marvel, the game that I used to play, your powers didn't go up very fast. You had power stunts you could develop, which was cool. But that was getting to know your power. It's I still think it's one of the best games that was ever made. Especially for superheroes, just in the way that it plays. Everything in the rule system is narratively geared towards playing comic books. And so if you even look at a comic book character, they have that same power level forever. And then eventually get a new power.
Hello, Bear.
Hello, Bear.
Hello, Bear.
Hello, gentlemen. I've called to order this meeting of the Bald Men's Association. I hope we're all doing well. Elf, we're gonna have to hold you down and shave your head, sir. Hate to break the news to you.
Well, I mean, I cut my hair recently, but I'm not bald.
I believe nothing you say because you are a puppet to me, sir. That's all I know.
I'm
His
a
hair
puppet
is
to
only
you.
one Velcro strip away.
Yeah, exactly.
I just want to quickly, before you say, I just want to quickly mention we've been simul streaming in recent weeks. Can't do it tonight because I don't have the StreamYard subscription anymore. Yeah. So that function has gone. So sorry to anybody who was used to supporting other channels and sharing the love, but you can still share the love if you want to. Mage has a channel, Elfmate has a channel, Bear has a channel. Share the love to their channels. Go give them likes and loves and comments and play the algorithm, because we're all in this together.
And the delicious subscriptions, minions. Yes, the delicious subscriptions.
As Sean well knows, I don't care. You can like my videos, you can subscribe, you can downvote them, you can leave me. I don't care. As I've said many times over, the day YouTube becomes my job is the day I'm exiting stage left, because wow.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Too stressful.
It's still nice to have engagement. It still feels good when you see people having engagement. Anyway, I want to come to go on, Omen. Go on.
I was just
what are you talking about? I came in and I heard the word superhero, and I was like, "Ooh!" I got excited.
Okay, well,
talking about high level campaigning.
well, Elfmate was talking about the Marvel superhero system. Your character, you got Incredible. You start at the lower points for Incredible, and you worked 1 point up into the point you can get up to. I forgot what the next one was.
Amazing.
Yeah. See,
monstrous, unearthly. I get them all memorized.
You're in my wheelhouse now, sir.
Yeah.
But those small changes allowed you to learn your superhero, and that's you have.
There's just so much to like about that game, because I mean you're pumping your experience points into trying power stunts, and you have a chance to get the power as a permanent power early on with good die rolls, but eventually after you've spent the same amount of money experience it would take to buy a new power, you just flat out get the power. But to do the power stunt, you have to be thinking about your powers, and so the DM and you, or the GM and you, are actually, you're actually engaging with your character. Like if I have ice control powers and I'm like, I want to come up with blah, your GM's going to say, okay, spend your karma, do your roll, but you're getting more powerful by engaging with your character.
Well, I'm going to say,
are we discussing phase rip specifically Marvel superheroes, or are we just talking about high
that's
power
what I was
gaming?
talking about. Well, phase rip, we've decided to phase rip.
Because I can literally go on about this, and like I can just go. So that's why I want to make sure I don't derail the conversation into the entire breakdown of superhero role playing genre. I write comics, man. It's like it's my thing.
We are generally discussing high power gaming, but we have sort of morphed into a bit of superhero stuff. But before
high power.
Before I set you free, I do want to come to a few comments that I've starred in chat that I've left starred for a little while, and I just want to answer a few things that have cropped up. Ian asked, do skill-based RPGs suffer from the same high-level problem as level-based RPGs?
Yes.
Less so, very much less so, depending on how high you allow it to go.
But D6 Star Wars, like I was talking about earlier, is a skill-based system, and it's really easy in that game to start making the most powerful characters in the Star Wars universe look like chumps.
Cyberpunk 2020, same problem.
Yep.
Once you've got a 10 reflex and a 10 pistol, you're not missing another all day long,
Yeah, World of Darkness, when you get combined dice pools and you're up there at like 12 dice, you're like, okay, well...
No.
Well. The other point though is this is where you need caps and skills and attributes. If you let just keep being uncapped, then you're gonna get the problem of power creep.
Well, most of those games do have caps, but the thing is that the effect in the game is, a high level of skill is a high level of skill. It's in a skill-based system. So if my blaster in Star Wars is 12 die, which is up there which is pretty high. I mean, that's extremely high. Like 8 die, 7 die, 9 die is what you're typically going to see. But if you have a player character who focuses all of his stuff into his blaster, he can get up there. It gets really prohibitively expensive XP wise to get up to that point.
But this is the built-in economy. This is the same thing Marvel Superheroes has that Star Wars D6 has. Your experience is also your purchasing power, but it's also your save your ass power during the game.
Yes, because
so in Marvel you're using karma, in WEG you're using character points. So you have to either be really lucky to be able to spend all of that experience to get powerful like that. Most people aren't. They're blowing it on power stunts, or they're blowing it on, re-rolls and extra D6s and what have you. So it almost
pushing your rolls
regulates itself, to a certain extent. In a game like Cyberpunk, there is no built-in regulation.
Yeah.
And as a result, you can get all your skills up to 10. You get your special ability up to 10. You get your stat up to 10. Plus you add cyberware on top, and you become a god. And the system, which is amazing and brutal, sadly breaks when you get to that high level of play where characters are like, I'm going to jump out the window, do a somersault flip, it turns into the Matrix.
I still can make the shot.
Exactly. I'm going
to say, I mean, I, as you all know, I don't play sci-fi stuff. So, I haven't played a lot of skill-based games in terms of wide range of games. I mean, there are skills in MERP, but they are quite general. And MERP scales quite nicely because fighters never get extra attacks. Magic is relatively low powered at low levels, and it doesn't become really overpowered anyway. And in combat, those critical hits will always keep the characters on edge.
Yeah,
so
that works for MERP, though, because
Well, I mean, MERP does that. Alien does it because you're still going to get your ass kicked if you try doing stuff that's wrong. You don't go, I'm badass. Yeah, okay, you're going to get shot and you're going to end up dead. We don't care that you have 5/5. I think that there's...
The other skill-based game that I play is, of course, Call of Cthulhu. And what is high-level play at Call of Cthulhu? It's when you've gone insane.
Well,
maybe.
Yeah,
Do you guys remember the 1980s box set, Call of Cthulhu box set, where it had an introductory adventure in it, which after you went through all the adventures, the last adventure, Cthulhu shows up, which you immediately lose 100 sanity on seeing him the first time you see him. So no matter how good you play this game, no matter how powerful your character is, no matter how great you can do, the best you can hope for is to go stark raving mad.
Good. Next one I want to come up to is I know people. I just want to give a quick answer to this one because I know people answered this one in chat. Kabuki, come on. No, I didn't play it. My mate had it. We never played it. I didn't even read it. I wasn't interested. And long way back, we were talking about things you throw at high level characters, and R.W. Bishop suggested, how about a high-level good paladin or something, raising an army to clear out the Underdark? I wanted to bring good to the Hellish Plains. Yes, that is a suitable high-level adventure, right? Looking at that from the side of the DM screen, that could cause Cthulhu-esque insanity to the DM who's trying to run that sort of game because of the amount of juggling and work and prep that would go into it. That's the issue. Yeah, I think it'd be great fun, but it puts a lot of pressure on the DM to come up with something that works.
So when I was in high school, my friend Sam and I were playing first edition AD&D, and our buddy Sebastian was running the game for us. And we were in Greyhawk, and we were levels 16, 17, something like that. I was a Cavalier. He was a gnomish illusionist thief. And he figured out, because I was a Cavalier, I was a fighter class. I got that based on hit die extra attacks every round. And he came up with this maddening plan to recruit a bunch more fighters in high level. And we were going to invade the Pomarge, slaughter all the one hit die monsters in the Pomarge, and then handle the other ones, because 2 hit dice is nothing to us, 3 hit dice, but we'd be wading through these monsters and establish a kingdom. And our DM, after hearing his master plan, Sebastian, closed his book, put his GM screen down, put his dice in his bag, and said, "No, I'm not running this campaign. No." So
bad DM.
You're supposed to in high school. Come on, Sean. We were high school kids.
Well, I mean, I think this is part of it. Is it fun for the DM? We can all talk about, is the DM a player? Everyone has to have fun. If DMing becomes work, I expect to get paid. I expect to get paid very well. And
see, there's one campaign module that I did want to end my AD&D campaign with, and that was Bloodstone Pass, because I think that handled what high-level play should be quite well. Yes, there were some weird encounters in there, but the whole basis of that game, of that adventure, it was written mainly for battle system, and the idea was it was quite to lean into the political side of the of adventuring, and you were trying to raise an army while being pressed for time to do it, and you had to go around the countryside doing deeds for people, raising an army, and then it would all play out using battle system rules, where your characters would be the commanders of the various units. And I'd run that sort of game. If you wanted to invade the Pomarge, raise an army and do it. That's how I'd run it, with battle system.
But that just goes to what I said earlier. It's a shifting of the style of game as you level up. No different than political intrigue, or you're the generals in a war. Well, it's the expectation of, okay, as we advance, the game will change, and if you don't want that, which is fine, then it's keep retire your characters and start over, or play your henchmen or underlings or whatever, and just keep doing the dungeon crawling or what you have been doing. But the changing game is still just as valid, and I think a shift in the perspective of, hey, we're now getting into domain level play, let's try it a new way, is probably a more positive approach than the game breaks down, it's no fun anymore.
Well, okay, but at the same time, and I agree with you 100%, but I also agree with what Omi now says, which is basically, if I'm not having fun as a DM, or a GM or a narrator or a referee or a judge or arbiter or, you know, talking stick coordinator or whatever the hell system they call me, why am I doing this?
No, absolutely.
Exactly.
Right. So
but
I think I can forgive him. Hang on, let me just finish this point.
Yeah, go ahead.
I can forgive him because he had a campaign he was running, and it was a very good campaign, and it involved, you know, the Circle of Seven and us, you know, taking on IUs and all this fun stuff. And we went, let's go raid the Pomires and take it over and become kings. I mean, we were derailing his entire campaign at that point in time, just doing what we wanted to do.
Mhm.
There's a
you were
certain onus
teenagers.
on the players to
Yeah.
buy in as well and be part of the story or the campaign or the narrative or whatever you're doing. Not just go, yeah, that's nice, we're going to go do this instead, because that's just shitty play at that point for me.
Right. Well, all I'm saying is it's, you know, managing your expectations will change everything, right?
I think,
and understanding what you want to play, as you say, what do you want to play, and the DM, what does the DM want to do? You know, I mean, for me, I mean, again, I can only speak from my point of view, my experience in my games. I play to see what will happen. To bring these cast of characters together and then let them play in the sandbox and see what will happen. So I do my best to adapt to their decisions, and what they do affects the world. So I have no preconceived notion of how it's going to go or what I have no overarching story. I have things I'll throw in, you know, to sort of tease and test them, but I don't have an end game. I just want to see what will happen. So yeah, if you've got a story planned out where it's like, okay, you're going to be doing this and this and this, then yeah, I can totally see where, you know, maybe the high level domain play isn't going to be what you're going to want, but it's still a valid kind of perspective. I don't necessarily think the game will break down there. I think it's just a matter of understanding that the game evolves and changes the more you go on, and being willing to evolve with it, or saying nope, or being self-aware to say nope, we like this style of play, so we're going to stay in this milieu. So if our characters are at that high level domain level, let's just they had a good run, let's retire them and go to new characters.
Agreed.
I'm picking up one other thing too, which is specifically for D&D, and then you compare it to battle system. At a certain point, the rules become very clunky and don't work well, so you need to use another system to do what you would like, to keep it fun. I mean, you know, a perfect example is if anyone has ever played some of the old Warhammer stuff, it's slow. It takes hours if you want to do big battles. You're like, well, let's go over to a different system that allows us to do much faster battles, so we can actually get along with the story and we can still have that feeling. And I think that's another aspect that comes into it is I don't want to play D&D rolling everything. Let's go to a battle system, which is one level, and then, hey, let's go look at this. And I think that's where that's probably one of the reasons that I branched off to so many different games, was trying to chase the not quite the dragon, but trying to chase the bigger and better monsters that were out there, which led me to Warhammer and a few others. That I was like, well, I want a better battle system. I want something where I can put in, you know, a size of armies like, you know, you had in, you know, the fields of Pelennor. That's what I want. I want, you know, I'm okay. Especially growing up as a kid, my father used to get the Gettysburg game. Okay, 100,000 soldiers on one side, 70 or 80,000 on the other, and you're going to battle out for 3 days. Okay, let's go work this out. You know, the Battle of Waterloo. You know, you get these big, massive battles. You can't do that in a D&D game if you ever want to finish this year. So you have to go do it that part as well. And so I think that's and if you have what I want to say, dedicated gamers who enjoy mechanics and trying out new stuff, that's great. If you have a lot of casual players who know their characters, they may know a little bit of the powers, but they're not into learning new systems, it's going to fall flat. So
I mean, that goes without saying, though. That's true of any game, though. If you don't have the player buy-in, the game will fall flat.
No, I mean, if you're running a superhero game where you're saying, hey, okay, costumes, code names, and some guy, you know, 3 of the players show up and go, I want to be like dark ninjas that wear trench coats and jeans. And you're like, dude, that's not the game I want to run. At some point, like, there's got to come, like, Session Zero, I think, is a useful tool that gets overblown as a vital tool, but it is a useful tool to sort of establish it. Case in point, I'm going to be running an Against the Dark Master live stream on my channel. And we got together on Monday for the live stream, and we started talking about the world, the setting, and all that kind of stuff. And the characters are now going to be part of that world. To address what Sean said, there is a plot to the world. There is a quest. There is a point of being in the world. It's not just run around and kill monsters. They're going to have things to do. But it's not an open sandbox, but it is still a sandbox in that, as I've said many times, Neil Gaiman's explaining how to write a story is how you take a trip. These are the places I want to see. How I get there is the journey. Well, these are the points I want to have happen in the campaign. How we're going to get there is going to be based on how the characters make decisions and which ways they go. So I think one of the problems we have with high-powered gaming, especially in D&D, especially modern D&D, players can do anything. They you literally have to pull the God switch to sometimes thwart the machinations of your players. And even then, sometimes they're just going to go ahead and smash the gods out of the way and keep doing what they want. It's not, for me, it's not fun. It's overwhelming. It's very, very bookkeeping. It's very, they call it wushu, for that reason. And there's a reason. If you go watch any of those old wushu movies, like, Journey into the West and stuff like that, it is the hero can do everything, and the I'm going to shoot lightning in this scene and stuff like that. Or it's like watching some of the old Indian fantasy films where the guy draws his bow and lets go, and then they cut to a shot of 50 arrows flying through the air, and then the guy gets hit with 10 arrows. It's like, it's like, that's not fun for me, but for someone and a lot of people that is fun. And God bless them. Let them.
I don't mind it if the system is built for it. I think in certain cases, this is where you begin to see where the system breaks down. Exalted works fine for that because you know that's what's going to happen. But D&D doesn't quite work as well for that from that aspect. And those are the things I think that you get into it is. That's why I said sometimes you have to switch to a different system in that case. And to be fair, if you know and how you create your characters, let's go for this. I think also, at a certain point in D&D, the expectation once you got up to the 14th and 15th levels, you were kind of expected to become a demigod, have people worship you, and move on. You now become an NPC. You've reached the pinnacle. Congratulations! You got stars in the sky. You've now moved to the background, and now you get to start over. I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool.
We spend a lot of time playing our characters' kids.
Yeah.
Back in the day. And then with my group, it'd be like, hey, Dad, can I have that +2 sword that you had?
I think generational gaming is great. That's why I like to enforce time passage
Conan's
in my
kid
games.
started adventuring in the comics,
No, but I did this once in a game where basically what I did was I had them play each other's kids. They didn't play their direct descendant. They played the descendant of a different character at the table.
That's actually a really good way to do it.
And it worked really well because suddenly they kind of were able to give that rebellious child teenager feeling, so it was weird, but it worked.
The funny thing about that is even if they don't play the rebellious, like openly rebellious, they're still like that whole parent thing where like, as much as I tried, I don't get my kid. The kid's not going to be the ideal version of what they wanted it to be. That does work.
But I think that's part of the fun part of it. We're talking about high level, and in some cases is, we're talking. How do I want to put this? If you're going to play a traveler game, you go from a single ship to an armada, to the point that you're going to be taking over the universe. That can be a lot of fun. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that, like you were talking about where they're going to take over the Palmars, that to me would sound like, oh yeah, let's do it. That's awesome. And then the game's like, no, I'm done. The other part is that it talks about railroads versus complete sandboxes. And I kind of go, I think of it like interstate highways. You have exits that I'll let you get off on, but you kind of have to stay on the road. You're allowed to stay on the road for a bit, and then you have exits where whatever you decide, we're going to let you go off. I'm just not going to let you off road all the time. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, if you miss your turn, wait a mile. There'll be another off ramp. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to force you to do that, but you're not going to just suddenly say, you know what, we're going to turn into the cornfield and just drive straight through this. Like, no. You don't have the vehicle for that. You can keep going until you hit the exit, and you can go to the gas station, and then you can go pee. That's the way it works.
Well, I hope I didn't drive everybody out. I showed up and like people are all like, "I'm leaving. I'm out of bye." Yeah, sorry, Jesus.
It always happens around this sort of time because this is
I know.
Going home
being
time
me.
from work. It's going home time from work. It's getting dinner
I'm just
time.
being
That's the thing in
excessively
America.
Canadian. That's
Because
all I'm doing.
most of our watchers are American and Canadian, so it is that time of day
Yeah,
for people.
we have the most free time on our hands. Let's be honest.
Well, I'm going to say high level play. I don't believe is remotely suited to casual gamers.
Nope, I agree.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah.
It certainly with older versions of D&D, if you run a one shot with casual players, fine. But one issue I had, we play a campaign for 3 or 4 years, and this possibly shot me in the foot a little bit because I've said many times on stream I didn't teach my AD&D group the rules of AD&D, and the group varied in their level of commitment to learning their characters and what have you. And it got to a point, I was playing through the original modules for my nostalgia and to show my group what the original modules were like. And it got to a point where the difficulty levels in those modules expected serious gamers. And my players just pretty much hit a wall and died in the space of 3 or 4 sessions because the modules
problem fixing itself.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. But equally, later editions, 5th edition, has pretty much corrected that by making the characters very, very robust at high levels. But the game grinds to a halt if the players are casual and they don't know their characters so well. So I think throughout history, a lot of these casual gamers are the ones who probably want to play heroes because the whole point, they think, look at the game, they're thinking, we're going to be like Aragorn, we're going to be like Conan, because that's what they've seen and that's what they imagine a high level character to be. But when it comes to the reality of playing those games, they're really not suited to them.
I'm going to bring it forward.
I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding of those characters. Most of those characters are not all that high level. If you look at the action, if you look at the action in Lord of the Rings, it's really not all that high level. They spend a good chunk of their story running from danger.
Oh yeah,
and avoiding
because they're playing Merp rules.
Well, this is what
I was
E6
trying to comment on
right?
earlier. Yeah.
Well,
you know the E6
before,
E6, yeah, where you basically
like Aragorn,
you cap out at
as
6.
a ranger, it's not that powerful. But boy, when you get up in that, when you get really high up there, one is, even if you want to play those games, let's say you just want to do a one shot, it takes hours to make your character. And I think that there's that aspect as well. My friend talked about that. We're going to do a one shot. I said, he was doing 5e. I said, you do a one shot of 18th level characters. I said, do you know how long that takes to make, let alone anything else? And we have to do this. This is one of the things I don't want to change a little bit. Games have to be fun to make characters in. I think that's part of what I love about this. Is why I hate GURPS.
I will say that's one good thing about doing high level with the hero system. All right, everybody, spend 750 points.
Well oh my God! Even with GURPS with 200 points, I'm like, just shoot me. Just shoot me.
No, it's easy because you're just spending like larger chunks of D6 at 750.
Well, you say that, but at a certain point, like I'm done. Let me
Although
double
hero
check.
system is the game system, I've always said it's more fun to play characters than to actually play the game. But
way more fun. You have a gross out, right? Where you get together with your friends and go, no limits, this many points, make the sickest character you can, you know.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, a game does have to be fun to make characters in, but also, I mean, that goes into so many things. Like people's aversion to character death in D&D, I think, is directly in proportion to the complexity of making their characters. Back when we were playing AD&D, your character died at 3rd level, 2nd level, 4th level, 5th level. You weren't out an hour and a half of labor to make your next one. And so you really didn't whinge all that much over the loss of your character. Nowadays, that character is work to make or in a
Well,
system
no.
where it's worked to make.
Well, fifth level didn't bother me quite as much, but you're right. When you start putting more and more powers, it does get to be a pain. The assumption with D&D is, okay, your character died. Guess what? Make a new first level character. You're like, okay. And the current one, it doesn't. They don't do the whole troop play with everything else. But character creation is.
Cyberpunk was mentioned. Cyberpunk, making a character in Cyberpunk is a lot of pouring through lists and figuring out what you want to have. So even a simple character in Cyberpunk is like, all right, well, humanity loss, calculating that. Do I want to go dexterity build, or do I want to just, or you can make a guy. I don't want any cybernetics.
Stop using the B word.
Building? No. It's no. But this is Cyberpunk. You do build. You do build.
The B word.
Build.
Well, listen. If you're gonna play Cyberpunk, you better make 5 characters before you show up there. You got a week to make your 5 characters because the first 2 are gonna die horribly in the gunfight.
Yeah, I mean, one round of 5.56 is gonna take out a character.
That's my standard policy for all my D&D games. Everybody has 3 characters, 2 backups ready to go at any given time.
Yeah. Well, talking about buy-in, I know Sean and I have talked about this off screen, is if you go and play AD&D and use all the rules, players have to be 100% vested into that, because it's like, well, what weapon works against this armor? What weapon works against this? What's going for this? And I think that's a...
Pole arms.
Yeah, well, pole arms would be one. It's like, well, why do you have a mace and a pick and a sword?
Well, just get one pole arm, the right pole arm, and you won't have to worry about carrying multiple weapons.
That was the pole axe, why the pole axe.
Hammer, spike, pick, staff.
But it's a consideration.
It's even a 10-foot pole in a pinch.
Yeah.
New from Ronco.
The Swiss Army pole arm.
Halberd is the original.
Has this ever happened to you?
Fighting goblins difficult.
Can't open that can of beans.
You gotta love those commercials where they make people look like absolute phoebes. It's like flipping an egg too difficult. Oh my god!
And they always have that look, that why God look, like.
If only somebody had taught me how to flip an egg.
Well, speaking of which, this is why it was the scepter. Is it the scepter or it's the Vada command? I can't remember, but the one that opens up the different weapons. That's just so cool.
Go gadget hammer.
Yeah, it was, but those were. Those are the I can't remember if it's the Vada Might. It's been a while. I have to pull out the book, but it has all the different ones But you really have to be 100% into the game to get that in there. Otherwise, you don't want to sit there and everyone takes their turn of 10 seconds, and then one guy goes, and I hate this so much. I just want to strangle players. This comes back down to bad players. Think of what your character's going to do in his action when it's not your turn. Don't wait till your turn to make a decision.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
In my defense, sometimes you're sitting there watching, listening to what everybody's doing, and it takes so long for them. You're like, I have no idea what's going on anymore.
Yeah. One thing I like about AD&D Initiative is that mitigates that a bit by you call declarations before you roll initiative, and everybody's committed to their course of action. If you change your action, you potentially lose your turn. So
I refer you back to a few weeks ago's initiative stream. Where we discussed all of this.
Or Sean's little short on initiative and the convoluted state of it.
It's still one of the most brilliant things I've seen on the internet in ever ages. No, cat, you can't eat that. No.
So, systems that work well for high-level heroic type play. We've already mentioned Marvel superheroes because it's designed for that.
It's a game that accepts the existence of the Hulk.
I'm gonna put a bop on that bubble right now and tell you there is a limit to how good Marvel plays, and once you get above Unearthly, it breaks. It just breaks.
Yeah, but you really don't have much business getting above Unearthly, though.
Thor.
What? True.
Thor, Juggernaut, Colossus, all these guys.
Galactus.
Now you're just talking crazy.
He's somebody you're supposed to be stopping or fighting or dealing with. I mean, it's okay for the NPCs to get up there, in my opinion. But you're right. I mean, Marvel, as good as it is, it still has its problem. don't think
yeah.
any game system is going to be infinitely perfect all the time. Marvel does superheroes really, really well. Is my big point.
It's the simplest game in the world. You can teach anyone to play it in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
A newer.
Except for 14-year-old me, I could never figure it out.
Then you had the wrong teacher, sir. You had the wrong teacher.
No, I was an idiot.
Oh, no.
But no, other game systems that deal with high level play. Oh, wow, I don't play too many because I'm not a power gamer, so I've never really gravitated towards power games.
Yeah, Exalted.
Exalted. That's the core concession of the game. We are all mythic level heroes.
Yes. Well, but I mean, but the same thing for superheroes. And now I'm just bringing these out. But the base book. Ugh, I'm gonna break my wrist from this. This is like 600 plus pages, and that's just that one. No, my favorite is Lunar, just because I like the shape changing aspect. But you go through all that, and that's really cool. That said, is when you actually play the game, it's kind of assumed that you didn't go way through your mooks like they're nothing. It really is. I actually liked it when you were just going to play just hero level characters, for the god level. What is it? The god blooded, which are much lower level, but you can do. But it can become real gritty from that aspect. But it does scale over. But it's interesting because at a certain point you're expected to deal with dragons and demon lords and death lords and the whole gamut. It's like, okay, what are we going to do? And everyone is overpowered. It's like you're saying, the wushu aspect, but it's okay. The one thing I do like about that is you start off with a certain level of power. It does take a while to beat your character, but to get new powers is slow. And so your characters move up actually feel like they're growing organically rather than something that's, oh, look, I went from first to third level and I have to pick a subclass. And what subclass is best? And by the way, if I pick the wrong subclass, I screw myself over 10 levels later. That's part of the reason I don't like some of the decision making for D&D. But no, there's that one.
I suddenly find myself thinking that like the only games I've ever really played that I've played really high level are D&D or Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
Same.
I've seen people get outrageous in West End Star Wars, and I've seen things get out of hand in Cyberpunk, but that's never been me playing them. Like, it's always been the same guy in my gaming group. This is a guy I was talking about earlier, where we're gonna play Marvel, and he's gonna make Thor while I'm playing Spider-Man. It's like,
but that's the beauty of the system; it can handle that.
Well, that is true. That's generally superhero gaming. That's why superhero gaming is okay. Is really great because.
But all superhero games can do it, dude.
That is true.
Some of them break. Like you take the DC game with its exponential increase, right? It does high level very well, but if you you cannot justifiably in DC Heroes, and I look forward to all the hate for this one because I know there's a big fan base.
Is that the old school DC Heroes?
Yeah. Here, I mean, this guy right here
with the blue books.
This guy here, or you can get the 3rd edition or whatever. Anyway, the point is, you can't have Superman and Batman and Robin and Wonder Woman all on the same team and equally challenge them. Because every point, so you have 1, then you have 2. Well, 2 is double what 1 is.
Yep.
3 is double what 2 is. 4 is double what 3 is. Up and up and up the scale, right? It's their exponential scale. That's what they call it, the exponential super system or whatever. As a result, when you start getting up to Wonder Woman, you calculate the math on Wonder Woman's strength in that game, she can lift a mountain. A decent-sized mountain. And then you got the boy Wonder standing right beside her. Hey, that's going to work out.
Yeah, Hero System does something similar to that, where each level, each full D6 or something, or every 2D6 is like double the previous level or something like that. And that got out of hand real quick in one game. I was letting my players make their characters, and run their characters and do their experience. The big tanky guy in our game, by the time I caught up with his character, if physics would allow, he could juggle aircraft carriers. It's like he could lift enough to where one-handedly he could press a capital ship.
Right. Sorry, go ahead.
God, I say just before I come to K5K's comment here, I just Hungar says all you need is a doppelganger, and Hungar is probably right with that.
Hungar the Starvarian. I'm sorry, I love the name.
I have this T-shirt. I have his T-shirt with this image on it. It's
Hungar is a fixture around these parts, Bear.
Nice to meet you.
But it is a wonderful image as well. This image he's got here. But I want to go back to what K5K said about testing the players, which of course was the original premise of the Tomb of Horrors. It was a test the players scenario, but I'm not focusing on Tomb of Horrors. As a DM, you do learn your players' weaknesses, and it is a way of testing how well they continue to play when they reach high levels by plundering those weaknesses. First 5th edition campaign I ran to a high level. They were blitzing through bad guys left, right, and center at level 10 or 11, and I ran them through a conversion of X5 Temple of Death, if you know that adventure, and I converted the master into a cleric-based lich. And I had lots of minions I converted, and of course they charged into the middle of the temple and they were fighting away, and this fight was one that they were horribly outnumbered. But there is a get out in that if you damage the master's casket, it damages him. That's I can't remember whether that was in the original adventure. I think it is something like that, but I twisted it for this particular adventure. And of course they got into the habit of expecting they were going to win and playing their character sheets, and they realized that far too late. So if you can say, in that sense, I was testing their weakness, because it's a weakness I'd spotted. Even then, I captured them, let them be captured, and gave them a chance to get out. And they had one other weakness, and that was they were very precious about their possessions and their treasure. And as they were getting out, on their way out, I gave them an out. I gave them one more test. They were sneaking out without very many of their items. They were badly wounded. They hadn't recovered spells or anything. They were sneaking out of the prison there, and they went past the room where all their gear was stashed. And of course, they went back in, and they were probably 2 rounds away from escaping and getting away with their lives. But because they'd spent a few rounds grabbing all their loot and trying to re-kit themselves out, they were then overwhelmed, and that was the end of the campaign. They had failed that particular test. Well, I'd intentionally thrown it in because I knew it was a weakness of them, and I wanted to see whether they could play past it. And hitting the weaknesses. But I think the best system for hitting players' weaknesses is Call of Cthulhu, to be honest. But you hit their weaknesses in a different way.
Attacking the player's weaknesses as opposed to the characters, it requires a certain Machiavellian mindset, which could arguably be a DM versus player mentality, which we want to be careful about.
I don't think that's necessarily wrong. The problem I've had some cases is, how do I put this? It has, like what you did doesn't bother me, but I hated it whenever it felt like, and then I talked to my friend the same thing that he's dealt with, because he also plays, but you hate it when they say, this is your weakness. I'm going to create monsters specifically to target that, and I'm going to keep focusing on those things rather than saying, okay, one
difference. In my situation, it wasn't that the monsters were specifically created for the characters' weaknesses. It was the situation was set up to try and get the players to think a little differently.
No, I meant, but it feels organic. Like yours would feel organic to me.
Yeah.
What bothers me is that when you can tell the DM is just like, well, I'm going to throw something at you, and because I've run out of ideas, I'm getting bored. I need to throw something so I can have some fun. I think those are always issues that we have. Is how do we deal with that? So I always want to be close without being excessive, and I always felt that it was cheap to say, as a DM, I know all your weaknesses. Let me go focus on those, rather than saying, what would be unless you have an opponent that has studied the players and they know this and he's been testing them. He says, okay, now I know what your true weakness is. That's where to me it has to feel organic about that. And that was the problem that my friend had, was to get challenged, they would either invalidate their powers, which to be aggravates me to no end. It's like, well, I'll just invalidate this without it make, it's one thing to say, hey, there's this one room that's anti-magic, that's fine. But instead it was like, oh, well, the whole dungeon's anti-magic. You just got rid of half the players that can do anything. So yeah, that's where it comes into it.
But are we saying the players' weaknesses or the characters'
The characters.
Yeah, that's Dirty Pool. I'm sorry. I'm going to say it right now. Dirty Pool is playing on the players' weaknesses. Now, I'm not saying I'm against Dirty Pool. I'm absolutely in favor of it. But it is Dirty Pool when I have a player, lovely fellow. He is an agent of chaos. And I know if I put a shiny enough button in that room, no matter what character he's playing, he's going to have a hard time resisting the button, right? But that's not the character. So even if the villain has studied the characters and all that stuff, like you were saying, I'm still using meta knowledge of the player at that point in time. So is that satisfying, or is it better to find out the weakness of the character and then challenge the role playing of the player to have their weaknesses that they've built into this character come back to bite them on the ass?
Both absolutely have their place.
I'm going to bring up one other thing, because we're talking about, high level, but I'm going to bring up some things that artifacts, things that really unbalance the game. Sometimes with the artifacts, they're not well played. A lot of times they don't include the negative aspect to it. This is one of the reasons I do like some things from the Cypher Numenera style, which they have, which are called, they call them ciphers. They only work for so long. They work once and then they're gone. So you don't have to worry about things being necessarily overpowered, which is nice, even if it's overpowered completely for that one game. But it amazes me the number of players, and sometimes I feel this way too, to be honest, but if they lose their items, they feel like their characters have been cheated. And rather than, this is one of the reasons I like skill-based systems. The items matter less than your character, but in a lot of old D&D and stuff, your items mattered more than your character in a lot of cases.
Well, in old D&D, your character was much more defined by your items than his class.
Yes.
5th edition, you could lose all your magic items and you're like, I'm all right.
Yeah, but 3rd edition, the same thing. You get to a point in 3rd edition where your magic items determine your survivability.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that was expected. That was baked into the system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm just going to get off on a little minor tangent here, but 3rd edition broke D&D for me. The changes made in 3rd edition and the mentality of how D&D was played after 3rd edition was the breaking point for me, because it became so focused on superhero characters and not on collaborative storytelling, awesome adventures, great quests, and cool campaigns. It became, how badass a character can I make using this book? But we started seeing the web pages showing up with the ideal builds for characters.
Every issue of Dragon was just a ridiculous splat of alternate classes and builds and stuff like that. It was no longer a fun magazine. Even there, 3rd edition also became work for me as a DM.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it killed my creativity because the stat blocks for anything were so huge and involved, and even with templates and stuff like that for monsters, which is a cool concept. I mean, this is one of the cool things I wish they would have kept going forward with from 5th edition or 3rd edition was monster templates. But yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. 3rd edition was that point in D&D where I've probably played D&D the shortest in any given edition, with the exception of 4th because I never played it. But
and heavy. You know how heavy those books were, lugging them out to the trash to get rid of them?
I still have them because they're still worth mining, but yeah.
I got a bunch up there. Yeah.
And there's good ideas
up
in there
too. I liked 4E.
The Midnight campaign was really good for 3rd edition, and I'm glad that they redid it for 5th.
Yeah, Midnight was always a campaign that confused me, but I don't want to go down that road right now.
But I think that's that's the one thing that.
But it's one of those settings you could probably lift and put in any system and run it
against the Dark Master. You could put it in against the Dark Master like that, and it would be it would fit like a glove.
Yeah. I don't know if you're familiar with Midnight, John, but Midnight is the basic bit behind Midnight is let's write a campaign where Sauron won.
Yeah, the War of the Ring was won by Sauron, and now it's 20 years later, 100 years later.
Yeah, except for in this case, it's an elf queen, and Yeah.
And your characters are the resistance trying to take back from the shadow. It's a
and
bit
casting
different.
magic will have effectively the world's version of Nazguls coming after you.
Yeah.
That sounds great to me.
Oh yeah, but it was made for third edition, so the crunch and the amount of load on that campaign. Fortunately, the campaign books for it were very light on mechanics for a lot of it. So, yeah,
Straw Piglet says, "Have we determined the solution to power? Yes, kill them. Kill them all."
No, you embrace it. You embrace
or
the
of
power.
course, in comic book games, superhero games, there's always a bigger fish, right?
Yeah.
In every game, there's always a bigger.
That is true. That is true, yo.
Something you mentioned earlier, Eli, that I wanted to jump on, but I didn't want to interrupt your train of thought. Was you were talking about how in Marvel there was the slow builds to the high power, so it took you a while to get there. The same is true of D&D. If you're not going Monty Hall and you're just letting it play out at a normal progression, then that build is slow. Like my AD&D group, the primary one, the highest guy just made 6th level, and this is after probably 2 years of play.
Wow.
Right? So now tri-weekly on average, right? But
you're also playing with the full system load, though, right? With like all of the rules. That's your AD&D game, right?
Yeah, I use a lot of the niggling rules that everybody
all
hates.
of the training rules and all of the
Yes.
stuff that's in there to keep the people poor.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep them poor.
But that's my point. Is it's a slow build. You're not starting at level 1 in January and you're level 20 by March, right? So it's a years long campaign and years long process, and the highest is 6th level, and he doesn't expect to see 7th level for some time now. And they've got a group of 6 too, so they got to divide a lot of XP.
Yeah,
so that's a factor too.
I'm surprised that even in my 5th edition game, after playing for 2 years in the same campaign, the characters in the campaign are only 8th level.
After 2 years in 5e, you are a stingy DM, sir.
We've had some breaks, but it's also a pretty role play heavy campaign. So
we for my 5e game, we were just playing on Monday. We determined, I told everybody, like, hey, this is session 37. We've been playing a year and a half. Highest character is level 4. Mind you, we have a very full character graveyard. They have kept dying, and so it feels very old school in that regard. So it's working, but slow progress is a solution to the high level campaigns, because by the time they get there, they're ready for it.
Our OSC graveyard's growing nicely.
One of the things I like about the older styles of D&D, if I was going to play D&D, which I don't anymore, but if I was, is the time spent at a level by the characters. Yeah. They get to know everything. Like if they get a new ability, they get a new spell, they get a new thing, they get to spend time with it and master it and learn it and use it before they get the next new thing. 5e, it's always a new thing, always a new thing, always a new thing. And by the time they're at level 10, they have no idea how to use half their stuff.
It's worse.
My party always forgets all of it, all their stuff, class abilities, magic items they have. There's there's so much going on their sheets in their 5th edition characters. They're just like.
It's even worse than that. Now people complain. You go on the forums and whatnot. People complain about dead levels where you don't get anything and how they're horrible and must be fixed so you get something every level. I'm like, no, less, diminish it.
Actually, I'm of the opposite opinion.
I remember when all I got was a D6 of hit points, and I liked it.
I remember we used to throw rocks at each other's head for attack rolls.
We used to go out into the woods and fight and play out our combats with sticks.
Poor me now. Sorry, buddy. We're cutting you off. Go ahead. Buddy.
No, Sean, it doesn't bother me to get every level. But what bothers me is that they don't learn the level that they're at before they get the next one.
Or before they're salivating over the next one. Talking about, if I had this ability, I could have done this in this fight. Yeah, well, you didn't. Focus on what you've got. The here and now.
I think that's always been there, though. 3rd edition. But I think it's because even in AD&D, I was like, man, I can't wait till I get to 6th level and I get that ability.
Well,
or another spell slot.
I'm going to bring up another thing. It's not just that. It's the it's not that it bothers me for that, but people are building characters first through 20th level. Not
That B word again.
Yes,
That's third
yeah.
level. That's
Well,
third.
no, no, no.
That's third
Hey,
edition
hey.
right there for you, though.
Hey, John.
I know.
Build
Great
this
game,
interactive
Ruder.
this term is they literally, instead of having the character advance organically and determine what they're going to get, especially for a sorcerer, and you hear about it all the time. Well, no, I don't want that spell. Well, that spell would help you out. I don't want comprehend languages as a sorcerer. That's not, I want to have this combat spell or something. Just going, oh yes, but do what makes sense in the game, not on what you're looking at 14 levels later of, that's the other problem that you get into this too, which is, well, I have to make the proper choice now because it will affect me throughout the entire game where I may not like my character.
Well, your sorcerer refused to take comprehend languages? Well, guess what adventures are going to have a myriad of incomprehensible languages?
Exactly.
well, I mean, but that's the point, is then the players get mad about certain things. I said, look, how do I want to put this? This is kind of why I like the skill-based systems. Drop me in the skill-based system, and I'll go, you know what? I need to get this skill. I don't have to have that skill. I'll get like level 1 at stuff. And I think that's part of that's one of the things I noticed when we're talking about high level, which is very interesting, is you get some people that do the super narrow focus, but you'll find out that they're really weak in a lot of areas. But I noticed that a lot of them will start with a really high skills, and then they broaden out and they become a much more well-rounded character as they advance, rather than being just one mighty. It's like, oh, I'm gonna get everything in with the gun. Well, that's great. Not everything is solved with the gun. Okay.
Well, we can agree there's a difference between high level and high power.
Yes.
Okay, and they are two separate things.
Yeah.
Skill games, builder games like Champions can lead to high power characters who are very competent, characters who have a lot of different tools they can bring to the table, characters who can really, really, really screw up an enemy. D&D, as a general rule, doesn't do that. It just leads to high level, which is, I've got all this amazing stuff, but I'm really narrow of focus unless I'm a spellcaster, and then I can do everything. You know what I mean?
But you have to wait forever to get to that point as a spellcaster.
Well.
Yeah, level 6.
Well, this is why, and I'm going to joke about OSC here. If you actually notice their multi-classes, it doesn't limit the number of multi-classes you can get. So if you wanted to, you can be like, all right, I'll be a well-rounded elf. I'll get a magic user, thief, cleric.
I'll take them all.
I'll take them all. But here's the interesting thing. Because they are slowing themselves down so much to gain levels, they actually learn their character and everything that they can do.
I used to play a lot of multi-class characters, so
I did too. I used to play the fighter, magic user, cleric.
I always thought of my characters as characters, and so if I went from fighter to thief, there was usually a reason that I decided to start learning thief.
You know what I will never let players do in a 3rd edition plus D&D game ever? Take a level of barbarian after first level. I'm like, how? What does your character do? Does he go live in the woods for a year? Does he forget to be civilized all of a sudden? Does he go dig a hole and live in the dirt?
He went to a weekend retreat where they did primal screaming and found their
lodge. How did he become a savage?
I think it'd be justified. Look at Dances with Wolves. John Dunbar lives with the Sioux, and he gets his level of barbarian. Well, he was with them for a while. Well, that's up to the DM. But
we're back to town. I got a level. Well, I'm going to dip into barbarian.
Yeah, I hate the concept of dipping, but that doesn't mean a level or a multi-class can't be justified in some way. But yeah,
I have dipped for the sake of character. And like a good example was my 5th edition weapon master or battle master character fighter. I wanted him to be an agile swordsman, sword and board kind of dual, Renaissance kind of, sword and buckler man. And so Battle Master was a great way to customize his combat maneuvers. I took a level in Rogue to get like the sneak attack and all of that, because it made sense as a sword fighter to like sneak in that blow or get get around and maneuver around your opponent. Not because I wanted to be Mr. Thief and go around, but it made sense for my concept. It can be used for good.
I'm gonna bring this up too, which is, and this is one of the things I like. This is why I like the BX. Too many classes. You don't need a barbarian. It's called a fighter. That's it.
I agree.
That's what sometimes got me is there something unique that you're presenting? And that's part of the problem that I had with certain ones with the old school. And I understand why they did it. You know, they
I
had
remember
all
we
the
talked
different
about with second edition did Barbarian really well by making it a kit.
A kit, yeah.
And then every class had Barbarian kits. You had the Barbarian Shaman for your cleric, and you had the the Witch Doctor for your wizard. It was they made Barbarian a culture as
I
opposed
may
to a
be in the
class.
minority on this, which is that I think the only class that needed a kit book was the fighter, and everybody else was just damn fine the way they were.
Yeah,
the kit needed the complete fighter was needed to make the fighter a more viable class in the long run.
You're not
I
wrong.
liked the flavor of the thief book. I think that added a lot of tools in terms of creating guilds and really adding sort of that side of the game.
But they didn't need kits.
They
I was
didn't
just saying
need
that
them,
the
but I still
Barbarian was
like that
handled
book.
better that way. Yeah.
Sorry, let me rephrase that by prefacing it with I hate thief characters.
Well, then you just can't be helped.
Well, the other part here, which is I really did enjoy the demi-human books that they had. I mean,
I like those books for the role-playing sections, not necessarily for the mechanical boosts.
When they about the idea of the spell singer and a few others, yeah. But I like the idea that it also gave you. I agree with you. It's the problem with 2E is it just became a huge bloated mess, which happens to a lot of games. And that's why I like the BX as much as we talk about. When I was a kid, I absolutely loved the Wilderness Survival Guide. I did. I love this. I love that. But first off, is trying to memorize all the rules for that. It's like, you know what? I need my assistant DM to make sure that he can check the rules while we're going through and rolling the tables so I can tell what they're seeing while he deals with all of the mechanics behind the
eventually
scenes.
You'll figure out which rules you end up using, and you can sort of shunt the rest aside. But I sort of just want to make a quick point about the Barbarian. I mean, I tend to agree that the fighter as a general archetype fits all of that. What I like the Barbarian class for is to treat it as a sort of special warrior from a barbarian culture. So the Barbarian class is like a spirit warrior with additional abilities. So that same tribe will have fighters and shaman and maybe even like the scout types, so the thieves. But the Barbarian class is a supernaturally endowed spirit warrior. Right.
I understand that. I still hate it. I mean, I'm just going to say that. That's part of the thing is, how do I want to put this?
Line 5e is a...
well, and they just brought it further in. I would rather that have been a subclass in 5e. I wish that they brought subclasses at 5th or 7th level. Make them so players actually learn how to play. And I agree, slower leveling would have been better. Again, when we were kids, I don't know how it was, is I was playing D&D every afternoon with my friends. Well, guess what? You can
too much.
You can probably advance. We all talk about how fast the characters are advancing. Well, guess what? Over 2 months is like playing 2 years of your game. It's not too hard to get up to those levels very quickly, and then it snowballs at a certain point when they hit when they get the right magic items, they get everything else, and they just go boom, boom, boom. Oh, you know what? We can fight dragons. Now we get 1 gold piece per, and now they're just like, we aren't going to fight this, and then they move up very quickly at a certain point. And you're like, okay,
it's all well and good if you've got friends. And look at you showing off with having all your friends.
I will say, AD&D is also really easy to slow down experience climb by simply doing away with in AD&D doing away with XP for gold. Because I know back when we played, we thought it was dumb that you got experience points for gold. And we played with just straight monster experience, but we also had role playing rewards and stuff that we would play with. So we kind of homebrewed it, but that very much that's increased time in within the levels.
I want to address something Earthbound Misfit, which is a great name, by the way. I know where it's from. Something he's saying in the chat, which is a thief isn't a thief who specializes in poisons and sneaks up on people an assassin. Isn't anyone who's paid money to kill someone an assassin?
Even you don't
So
even
couldn't
pay
a
money.
mage be an assassin? Couldn't a cleric be an assassin?
I mean,
this is the problem. There's certain classes that D&D have had over the years that are not classes. They're just stupid.
Something I just pointed in, I just typed in while you were saying that is, the assassin class, anybody can assassinate, but the assassin class is specialized training,
I get
right?
the argument, Sean. I understand the argument that's made about it. I just think it's Look, give me D&D with fighter, thief, magic user, and maybe cleric. I don't even like clerics that much, but give me like those base 4 and let the backstory and the choices and how you play the character and the things you equip yourself with and the things you do define if you're a knight or an assassin or a spell singer or whatever the hell else you want to be, right?
I don't disagree with that, and that's why I like the difference between BX and Advanced. Advanced will give you all that nuance if you want to buy into it and it's laid out. BX is for that open interpretations. Like, yes, the fighter includes barbarians and rangers and all that. The thief includes assassin types and all that. So
God damn it, I'm a grog nerd.
Both are valid. I mean, there's no invalid style of play.
If you really want to get down to it, it's only assassination if the person you killed was important.
Otherwise, it's murder.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, where's my murderer class?
Now, bringing this onto the theme of the stream with assassins, I like the idea of the theme of the assassin. I've always liked the theme of the assassin. As a class, it hasn't always played that well, and it's quite difficult to incorporate in a game. But I think it's generally okay at low levels. I think the whole concept of the assassin, though, once you get to sort of like level 9, 10, 11, 12, it's assumed all along that you're in a guild. If you're level 9, 10, 11, 12, you're probably that guild master. So how do you
15 specifically?
15 specifically, but you're high up in the guild if you're level 9, 10, 11, 12.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you sort of, I mean, is it an opportunity to bring in guild politics and guild wars, or is it just a pain in the backside? Or is it just a pain in the backside?
Depends on how you want to run your game. I'll let you know how, because I recently had the Assassin's Guild thing going on with the Night Below game. Before the two assassins, got themselves killed trying to rob everybody, which was funny. But the way I do, like, fresh assassins, level 1 to 3, they are never sent out on assassin work. They are sent out as spies. And so they're told, go out, mingle, get yourselves involved in an adventuring party. Assuming, I always give the players, do you want to be part of the guild or are you an independent, right? But then that's simple enough. It's like, go out, make your friends. We're not sending you to stab these people in the back. You're a spy. And that is the primary job of the assassin, is you are a spy. So collect information and bring it back to the guild. Only at level 4, when they achieve that rank of murderer, are they potentially now eligible for wet jobs for murder. And that feeds into the politics and the story. I mean, it works pretty well for me. I can't speak to anybody else's experiences, of course, but that kind of structure aids. And then, like, we had the assassin player asking, hey, okay, we've got several months of downtime. Can I take a spy job for the Assassin's Guild? And so he would get a fee, and he could, we do all the roles from the DMG of how well the spying went and all that. So that's a whole other stuff that you can add into the game, and it just sort of enriches it.
I'm going to bring this up as you're talking about assassin. Some classes I feel should just be NPCs. They're meant to be that way. Some of them felt like the assassin class, and some of these others didn't feel like it was intended to be a troop style play. And that's what, to me, that was the whole point of when we were talking about class protection or niche protection comes into it. Otherwise, you might as well go to something else. And that was my feeling towards it. I really didn't like the assassin that much. Oh, look, you're evil. Now, if someone that's, how do we find this out? To me, it works better as an NPC rather than as a PC.
But that's, again, that's individual. Yeah. You say, okay, we're not doing assassins. How many groups do the same? It's like, that's fair. It's like, what you want and don't want in your individual game. But if you're going to allow them, then exploit them. Use them for all of the options.
Surprise! I'm very much opposite of Omen now. I was like, give me more classes. I'm happy with it. So
I'm remaining.
Did we just assassinate the conversation?
Because I have super strong opinions on this one, so it's best that I keep those just nicely in a box.
So that high level campaigning.
Yeah. What happens to the high level assassin? what happens when the high level assassin who's taken 3 dips into barbarian, and so we could go.
Well, talking about the Assassin's Guild and high level, it does tie into high level because an assassin player will possibly want to look into that. It's like, are they going to start their own guild? Are they going to murder the current grandfather of the assassins and take the place? Will they be watching their back?
High level, which version of D&D? Because that's going to determine a lot of different things for you, right? High level BX compared to high level 3E are very different games.
Very much so.
Very different power levels.
I'm just going to say now, I'm a grumpy, miserable old git who doesn't allow dips.
That's good. I ban multi-classing in all my games. I don't like it either.
I don't ban multi-classing per se because I like first edition style multi-classing where you are those with demi
classes and then you build up from there.
And you go from there. But also where if you're a human, you've got to really set your stall out from the start because of the way your stats have to be in order to multi-class.
Sounds like a build, John.
It becomes a lifestyle. I mean,
is it build by any other name?
No, I've always I'm not the sort of person who perceives a character class. I see that this is in the discussion at the moment in chat, but I don't like the idea of a character class merely being a collection of skills. I like it to be
an archetype,
pretty much your profession.
A theme,
and your
isn't that what a profession is, though? A collection of skills.
Well, no, I like thieves to be members of guilds. I like clerics to be part of a temple. It's their lifestyle.
I like paladins
more than is a collection of powers. Paladin is a servant of a god. Yes, that sort of thing. Yes.
I'm going to bring something else up as you're talking about high level. I know we talked about bards, months ago. At a certain point, as a human, the expectation is at a certain point you'll find mage dams that will increase your stats over time. So the dual class is not something that's going to be removed from it. And what's very interesting is when you become a, how do I want to put this? When you do become 9th level, it is very easy to move up levels. We look at the bard, okay, look. Everyone else is 10th level. You have gone through 7 levels of what is it? 6 levels of fighter, 8 levels of thief, and now you're like a 3rd or 4th level bard. I mean, it's
my opinion on the bard is you're a bard from the start, but you are learning the various skills as a group because it breaks all the rules. It breaks all the rules. So you have to declare that you are a bard from the start. And you'll always be a bard.
To me, I would allow you to do if you have the high enough to do the dual class, you would. The only thing that really breaks is the dual class, and if you're a half elf. So I mean,
which are core rules. Rules of the game.
It's an appendix. Well, I mean, you actually have lower stats if you look at it for a bard than what you to have a dual class human.
Well, the bard follows its own rules. So.
Yeah, I know.
That's why you have to declare you're a bard from the very beginning.
Yeah, you can't just choose to be a bard. You have to meet the requirements because you need 4 15s, and 11 and a 10, which is very hard to do.
But first you have to have a DM that allows them. And they're in the
they have to be allowed.
If not a core class.
I'm super handicapped in this conversation because 1E is the least amount of D&D I've played. So I'm just like, ooh, yeah, that weird thing where you had to do 8 different classes to become a bard. That was really smart.
You want to talk about a build. The bard is the first build.
Or it's like the druid in Beckme, the druid becomes a build, the mystic, it's like
or the paladin in Beckme for that matter.
Well, it's the same. You got to get to level 9 as a fighter, and then your alignment determines your path.
I can't say that I hate that. I kind of like the idea that a paladin is developed out of a fighter.
I wish they would do more of that, actually, so you can actually see where things go on. And I think, but that's part of the problem when you look at it nowadays for 5e. It loses a lot of its. It's like, we'll just start it this way. But like I said, for the bard, it's hard to get 450. It depends on what system you're rolling. If you're rolling 3d6, absolutely. If you're rolling 4d6, it's not as hard. It just depends on how you're doing that.
It's still it's a less than 1% chance with the 4d6 method to roll the stats for bard.
It's just funny now that I think about Beckme. I really feel like Beckme was almost sort of like the way that they wanted D&D to go. but AD&D was more popular.
It was. I think it was the Gygax version of what he was doing.
Because BECME was much more experimental and innovative when it comes to D&D.
It's marketing. It's marketing. And I can tell you this from a personal experience. I walked into a gaming store in London, Ontario, when I was 14. And it was a comic gaming store, and I wanted to play this Dungeons and Dragons, and I saw the red box, and I was like, "Ooh, this looks really nice." Yeah. And the guy behind the counter is like, "Well, this is actually the player's handbook for the advanced version."
Oh,
and as a dumb teenager, I went, "Advanced? That must be the better version. I'll take that then, thank you." Right?
Oh, exactly the same, yeah.
So it's, and then the Gygaxian stuff and all that didn't start until after 2E. Like the whole worship of Gary Gygax as a godlike character, creature. Because I remember people shitting on Unearthed Arcana when it came out, like straight up taking a dump on it,
Yeah.
So this idea, the mysticism of Gygax and all that, it was all marketing, basic versus advanced, and we were stupid kids who thought advanced meant better.
No, what I was saying is like design-wise, BECME. If you look if you look at BECME was definitely doing more with D&D as far as development and innovation and trying to create from within the system than AD&D was. But then again, AD&D was also supposed to be a codified thing for also competition play and all that funky stuff too. So
I'm just going to go get a drink. Just going to say, play nicely for the next couple of minutes. I'm just going to go get a drink.
No.
Okay. Well,
He's gone.
Well, I'm going to
He's gone. Burn the place. Kill the pig. Spill its blood.
BX also had the advantage of coming out a few years after Advanced did. Now we talk about Advanced, but when you start looking at, everyone looks at the 3 core books, I guess 4 if you include deities, demigods, but they did the experimental. They did the Dungeoneer Survival Guide. They did the World
came later.
All
came much later.
Well, no, but he was talking about the experimental aspect. Don't get me wrong. I like BX a hell of a lot better than I do the AD&D because AD really bogs itself down by having simulationist rules. That's what it starts coming down to. It becomes more like a simulation.
Can I give you guys a crazy idea? I want to throw a crazy idea at you guys. I want you to picture this idea of running D&D in your head. Take BX, okay? You got your 4 classes, your racial classes, whatever the case may be. Instead of adding in a paladin and a druid and a bard and all these things, take those special abilities they have, and as the characters start going down roads that are going to lead them that way, as they level, they get one of those abilities as a reward for leveling. So you got your fighter, he's level 5, but he's really pious and all that. And suddenly at level 6, God has given him the ability to lay hands now. So he's not a paladin class. He doesn't get all the other rigmarole around it, but he gets something special, or she, or they, that makes the character special now.
I'm going to bring up one other thing. It's instead of doing that based on level, to me it would be based on quests.
Well, yeah, but it ties to a level advancement is all I'm saying.
I know. I just meant that in certain cases I'm not disagreeing with you on any of that. It's really the
advantage of the bare bones, honestly, is that it does play into. It is the perfect building blocks, like a bare bones BX type of system. Yeah, you can play that into any direction you want.
Yeah,
because the characters are so basic. If you somewhere in the game, they get the favor of the fairy queen or whatever, and you're like, here's an ability. It doesn't break the bank for the game, because everything is so basic. So you can build your narrative on top of that, narrative, as be it as it may, whatever it is in your game. You can add to your world without having to worry about, did I just add something that unravels the fabric of the game as a whole, which is the more built up those games are, even 5th edition to that, to a certain extent, adding new stuff into the game or adding stuff on the fly just breaks it.
So one of the,
what all that sounds like to me? Another Kickstarter I can't afford to pledge.
Just hang on real quick. My whole thing on BX, and I've said this many times on my channel, and I'll say it every time, what I love about BX is the broken promise of 5e. Modularity. The idea that I can put things in and take things out without it. Every other game after 2nd edition is, my favorite movie in the world is Buckaroo Banzai. And there's a moment in it where they're doing brain surgery, and he says, no, don't tug on that. You never know what it's connected to. That is what every edition of 3 and 4 and 5 feels like, well, I'm going to get rid of this thing. Well, I've just ripped out the entire steam, and now this is all collapsed on itself because it was all being held together by this thread.
I'm stumbled my way into that a few times.
And BX doesn't have that. Sorry, go ahead, Omi, now.
No. I mean, we're talking about these things. I was looking at some of the old models. Was it B1 and a few of these others? You do this and you get a point raised, in your stat. You get this. It was much more, like you said, D&D was almost felt like a tournament style troop play. I mean, hey, look, we got 50 players. Whoever shows up tonight is going to play, and that's the way that Gygax ran things where he was. But if you look at BX, which actually outsold 1E and 2E combined, which I thought was interesting.
Really?
Yeah. If you actually look at the
goddamn expensive on the secondary market now, then Jesus.
Yeah. Well,
because those boxes don't survive.
Yeah.
Even the books.
But I mean, you do have to.
They were designed to be 3-hole bound. So.
Yeah. Well, but we have the OSE stuff, which is great, and then I like in some of the directions he's done with it. But it was accessible with the understanding. I think this is where the big difference comes from. It is we're all looking at the troop play. If you really look at the AD&D and how he starts designing it, you start understanding where he's coming from this. But for most of us, we play with the same core characters, same people day after day. We didn't play every night. We play every couple of weeks. And BX does that very well. As much as they talk about armor class, the dragons had 32, 37 hit points. You could fight that at fairly low levels. You didn't have to worry about this. As much as I've heard people complain, well, you whiff and you whiff and you whiff. Yeah, but if you're playing with 4 or 6 people, you don't whiff as often as you think you do. It's still a very dangerous monster, and it can TPK a party with 1 breath weapon if you aren't smart.
I still agree with Professor Dungeon Master on this. He says lower the AC and give them more hit points. That way the players are not whiffing, they're hitting, but they're taking longer to kill the monster.
Hard disagree. It's what I hated the most about 5th edition was the bloat of hit points.
But the thing is they bloated the hit points, but they also bloated the AC in 5th edition. That's my point. What he's saying is he says you lower the AC so they hit more often, but you give them some extra hit points.
That's exactly the philosophy of 5th ed. 5th ed, even at first level, you're hitting 2/3 of the time, but there's just so many hit points. I prefer the older system where, you don't hit as much, but 1 hit is devastating.
Yeah,
well, I suppose. I don't know.
Well, for me, I look at it this way, which is, he's like, we only get a 30% chance, 1 in 3 hit. Yes, but you're having 6 people attack all at the same time. And in certain cases, you do get a second attack or something like that. So it's like, okay, fights only take 4 to 5 rounds. The other part is I don't have to write down huge, long lists to figure out as the hit points go down and the players go down. I didn't mind it too much because it's like, okay, it goes down by this much. Okay, it goes down by this much. Like I said, a dragon has 32 or 37 hit points. I'd have to go look in the book.
What type of dragon?
In BX.
BX is
it's like 40, 50 hit points.
The hit point threshold is low.
I mean, 40 hit points, and you're going, okay, if let's assume that by the time you're fighting a dragon, you get a +1 sword. You probably have a +1 or +2 to damage. You get like +3. It's not that hard. And what is the armor class? Is it a 2? I can't remember, Sean.
2 down to -1, depending on the type of dragon, but in that range.
Yeah, and you are high enough level that it's like, okay, it makes it like, oh, a dragon is an armored tank. But boy, when you hit, you can feel it. And
and you'd better be sure you kill it, because if you don't, it's frying your ass and you're done.
But the damage for its breath weapons depend on its
hit points.
Unlike some of the later ones where it stays pretty level. I said, okay, that's fine. But it only gets 3 breath weapons, so it's going to say that. And the other part is you could subdue the dragon too. You subdue it and then you sell it off. I mean, I'm looking back at what's written in the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and Gygax actually started explaining some of his things, especially as kids. Did any of you ever read the forewords?
Yeah, and I can't remember. I mean, I've reread them recently, but I did read them as a kid. Yeah.
Well, they had the forwards, the acknowledgments, and the appendix. And I don't know, as a kid, I kind of skipped it there, like, give me the rules. I don't need to read this crap. And it's like, well, wait a minute, you just missed a lot of the.
You're assuming I even read all of the rules.
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole other question.
It took me for a long while to realize that BX and AD&D were actually different.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, just to answer Reg Prime's question here, and this is for us on the panel to answer. I'll start. The first box set I ever got was the Moldvay Cook Expert set, very quickly followed by the red box Beck Me Mensa set. Went straight into 1E within 6 months, and then over to 2E, and now I'm back to 1E, and now I'm running OSE.
Yeah, I cut my teeth on Beck Me. Played that for a couple of years, got into the Palladium systems, and second that came out in '89. I was 16 and got into that. That was kind of my go-to for 30 years. And then I reverted back to AD&D. I got dabbled in AD&D 1E as a kid, but it was way over my head because, as I mentioned earlier, I'm an idiot. And then, but about 10 years ago, I decided, you know what? I'm switching back to 1E. And so I kind of phased out my second ed game. I've been playing 1E heavily. And BX now lately because I got an OSE, which is BX. So I pretty much delved into all of them properly. Yeah.
Yeah. I started with Moldvay. And then, but prior to that, I had exposure to some of the earlier versions of BX or Basic, but at the time, quickly transitioned to AD&D because Moldvay was the first one I ever played, and then the first books I ever bought were for AD&D, and that's what the guys in the neighborhood were playing, and then we just sort of interchangeably worked BX stuff in with AD&D because we just kind of hodgepodge. Nobody could afford everything because so we all just kind of lumped our stuff. And then I went heavy into 2E, buying a lot of the splat books and everything like that. Enjoyed that. Played 3rd edition, got a lot of stuff for 3rd edition. Didn't play much of it. I ran a few campaigns. Never tried 4E, but yeah, I didn't play Beck Me proper. But again, Beck Me is so interchangeable with BX anyways. Just sort of
like 90% compatible.
Yeah, bought Beck Me stuff and just used it. But yeah, I've run campaigns in all of them and played in campaigns in the early in the BX and AD&D area. It's about the last time I was ever a regular player.
I'm gonna, for myself, let's see, I did the red box, and then I bought the blue, and then I saw this thing called AD&D, and advanced is so much better without really looking at the rules. And I said, okay. And of course, we had Dragon magazines, so I'd go scoop those up. So we were playing with the ninjas, the old ninjas that allow you to evade damage. So you get some with John. Hopefully, instead of just if you work through your White Dwarf and your Dragon magazines, I can't wait to get to the later ones. So I did the one, I did that, played 1E almost exclusively. I don't like this BX. That's for like children. I bought the rules cyclopedia, I guess, in 91 or 92. But I never really played the companion Master Immortal. I really didn't care because you had AD&D. It's like, well, why am I going to go over there? Then we talk about, 2E, played a lot of 2E. We did Ravenloft and Dark Sun, and I like Dark Sun because I had done a Monty Hall campaign, which turned me off so much of magic items and things. Like, I want it gritty. I want it this way. So we did that. Had tons of the splat books. But basically I left D&D and 2E when White Wolf had their stuff come out. I said, this is where I want to go. I want to go more storytelling and less mechanical, and I switched immediately over to there. Especially since there weren't any really good sci-fi games pretty much at that time that I was interested in. Star Frontiers had disappeared. I almost never saw Traveler, and Traveler had crap artwork, so it never grabbed me until I guess like the recent Mongoose. So it's like, oh, okay. So I got rid of that. But yeah, I did the battle system when they had that part in there and tried playing with that. But Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, I just thought there were a lot better systems. And now in retrospect, I really do enjoy the simplicity of BX. And when we start doing the advanced old school essentials, I'm like, I don't know how I feel about it. I like how Sean's doing it, which is, when you gain a level, you can add a character class. But I do also like the fact, I know that John here likes having his everyone picks a class. I actually like the demi-human race equals class. If you don't want, I want to play halfling, but I want to do this. I'm like, nope, this is what you get. If you don't want to play the class, then don't play a halfling. and it kind of limits it. And I thought that was a good aspect from my perspective. Anyway, sorry about that. Go ahead, Bear.
That's okay. I played a bunch of 1E in grade 9 and grade 10. By the time we played other, then I discovered. Well, I started playing with Star Trek FASA. That was my first role playing game, and I played the shit out of that. Then I played the shit out of 2E when it came out because I got sucked into 3 different campaigns, and I started running one. And then I discovered Marvel and Cyberpunk and what I was done. That's all I played for the night until like 2000. And then I did a little bit of 3E and went, yeah, this is not for me. I'm good. And I stopped playing D&D until 2009. Played some 3.5, played some Pathfinder, and then skipped 4E completely and just started looking at other games like Arrow Flight and all these other games. And Star Wars D6 was in there somewhere, and I love D6, my favorite system. And then 5E BX through OSE, but actually using the BX rules, not the OSE originally. And and now I'm tomorrow night. There's a video premiering on my channel explaining why I'm done with D&D and D&D style games, and I'm moving away from them. And I'm doing
it ain't so.
I will say one thing: the first D&D product I ever bought with my own money was the Fiend Folio. So, like, I was in the dark and grim side of D&D from the very beginning. So
I like the Fiend Folio. It was my favorite book in high school.
Oh, that Gith Yankee cover, just out of everything that was on the shelf. I bought it at a local department store too, and like not at a hobby shop or anything like that. And like my mom, can I have the $8 to buy this? Yeah, you want this thing with this horrible monster on the cover? Yes. All of the yes.
I had to order Fiend Folio from a Sears catalog and have it shipped over to Germany.
Wow.
You know, so that was one of those things. Well, we were, military brats. That's what we would see. And so whatever they had there is what we would buy. And so we had the monster manual. I bought most of the modules, A4, G1, 2, 3, the combination, Queen of the Demon Web pitch. I'm like, oh, this is, and I can't remember, for some reason, D1, D2, and D3 were almost impossible to find. We had to go scour the country for them. As an 8-year-old, you pretty much are taking wherever your parents take you, but that's how I ended up with Star Frontiers. And I was like, oh yeah, this is awesome. I can do everything with Star Frontiers. It has a map, it has counters, it has a good story. It's a skill-based system, which is where my love of skill-based systems came over from level-based systems. And I like the fact that the was fast.
I'm channeling my inner Saxius now.
I was about to say back to high-level gaming.
Yeah. Right. One last topic I've got a neat little list of things to discuss is one thing that pretty much what?
I'll just
one thing
Bear showing off the Star Frontiers.
The Star Frontiers box.
Oh, right. Okay. One thing that sort of shifted the way people thought, I think, in early days of AD&D was when data went and provided gods, so people could go and kill gods. And lots of people will have obviously, as teenagers, tested their characters against the gods. I personally would have preferred to see the gods portrayed a lot more like the Demi-Lich, in that they only had certain ways in which they could be killed.
Well, remember the gods.
I know second edition handled them a little bit better.
It was just what the stats were given for their avatars, not their divine forms.
Yeah. But I would like to have seen them portrayed more like the Demi-Lich, where it became a whole campaign to find out what their weaknesses were and to exploit a weakness, rather than treat them as sacks of hit points to be fought by high-level characters, which is how deities and demigods sort of presented those avatars.
Yeah.
We had a simple rule in our campaign, which was basically if you defeated a god, it was like in Marvel, and you defeated Dr. Doom, it was a Doombot. Even if you did a DNA test before you defeated him that said he was Dr. Doom, it was a Doombot.
That's what the whole avatar system was great for. So the second edition really spelled that out a lot. I think a lot more clearly than than first edition did. But yeah, you weren't fighting the god.
No,
You were fighting his manifestation.
I'm going to bring up the only module was Queen of the Demon Web Pits, where you're fighting Lolth as the goddess with the -10 armor class.
Well, she's only a demigod.
Was she a demigod? I thought she was a lesser god.
I don't know. I think she was only.
I thought she was a lesser god.
If she was a lesser god, she was supposed to be like just above the level of demigod.
But what got me with her was the, and I always looked at it. So technically, you would never be able to kill them because they can do instant teleportation anytime that they want. Which, if you're really mean to them, it's okay. They just teleport right before your sword hits them. Okay, yeah. Deities and demigods was cool. I think they did have some of the monsters like I can never pronounce the Hecatonir.
Hecatonir?
Yeah, that one.
The 100-armed, 50-headed.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, I thought that's where it did well is when it put some of the monsters in there. I thought it was interesting that it would put the levels of the gods. I think the worst thing they ever did was to put the armor class and stuff of them on there. Because the old thing is the worst thing you can ever do is you put stats on a monster because that means you can kill it.
Well, I mean, they did that because they'd already established that, like, even the greatest lords of hell and the devil himself had stats. So why wouldn't a god have stats? Because you have Asmodeus and Despater and Beelzebub and.
But the biggest mistake they made was trying to qualify all of those things in structured capacity. Like, this is the thing that will always break D&D's universe for me is, well, you can't have 8 gods with a valid creation myth. You can't have 8 gods created the world, each doing it a different way. You just can't. Marvel fixed that problem in the comics by having the thing they call the one above all. Right? So you have the Celestials, you have the Elders, you have all these things, but above them all is effectively God. Right?
The universe.
Effectively the idea of the monotheistic God, the true one God type idea. In D&D, you don't have that, right? You just have everything.
I'm going to bring up one other thing, though, is when we look at it, is not that the multiple gods ever really bothered me, but remember, you have infinite number of material planes.
That's where we're into this. That's just where D&D loses me so hard.
Well, I think you can make a good case for why they had god stats in there, though, because a lot of the fiction that they were reading actually featured god killers.
Reg, I agree with you, by the way, what Reg just said about, like, in real life, creation myths are myths and fantasy are in real life. I agree with you on that because that's the way it has to be. But people, when you start bringing the idea of a god, an all-powerful divine being into your story, right? You're opening up a big can of worms, okay? And I've seen players legitimately try and justify playing an atheist in D&D. They don't believe in gods.
It's like they literally exist.
There's tangible proof.
The cleric is right there. Yeah. No, I'm an atheist. It's like, geez, okay, fine, you're an atheist.
Well, and you have to look at Appendix N. When we say we lose stuff, anyone that's actually read Michael Moorcock and some of these others, you're getting into that multiple dimensional aspects.
The multiverse.
It didn't bother me so much as I said, oh, okay, maybe there are different gods in different areas, and that's fine. It was supposed to create that regional feeling. And I said, okay, that I didn't mind too much of. And yes, they do exist depending on the worshipers. I think the problem that you had in certain cases was, I'm not knocking it, but it was very interesting because they brought in real world gods and then mixed them in with their fantasy gods in there, and acting as if it was
you bring up a good point there, though, because I don't think deities and demigods was ever actually intended to be used literally in your game.
Yeah.
It was really just a novelty. Here's what gods from different pantheons look like, because when they started getting to their own game universes, like Greyhawk has its own pantheon with a very
Forgotten Realms has Tyr.
That's true. They borrowed some gods, but they also have their own. They have their own mythologies that go with all of that. Like, yeah.
The easiest way to handle it is this, and this is for me the easiest way to do it. It ties into a little bit of what gentleman said about in real life and what have you. Have you guys ever? And it's adult, but it's fun. You ever read Oglaf?
No.
The web comic. This girl basically sat down. She's going to make a porn comic, and she does one making an adult, funny fantasy comic instead. And it's really funny. And there's this one reoccurring joke in it where there's these priests of this god Sithrak, and Sithrak is going, why bother waiting until you're dead? Sithrak's making your life hell now. And it's like this whole thing where it's this running gag where these two guys are always showing up talking about the horrors of what Sithrak promises you in the afterlife and all this kind of stuff. And then one of them dies and meets Sithrak. And he's like, I've been doing all the stuff you said. He's like, what? No, dude, I wrote that when I was a teenager. I was going through my angst phase, man. No. I love you guys. I preach love.
Yeah.
And he goes back and he's like, how was it? He goes, Sithrak lies to us even in the afterlife. He's so insidious. So it's easy to say, yeah, did the priests make up the bullshit about their god creating the world in your
Absolutely.
world? 5 different creation myths, right?
Yeah. I was about to say,
the god can go, no, I didn't do that. That's your nonsense. I'm good. Sorry, go ahead.
But even the gods who do, lie and say, yes, I created the world. I always view the gods, the ones, the playable gods from the realms and whatnot, as they are greater beings, but they're still just beings. They're just still another race of type of a people who are certainly well above, common mortals. But they aren't the people who created the universe. They're just, other poor saps, extremely powerful, omnipotent saps who have to exist within the universe. They're fighting each other. They use mortals as their armies. And of course, they naturally created their own creation myths, or in the case of the honest ones, they don't expound that, but doesn't mean their people don't believe it, if you follow my meaning, and thus propagate those stories. So that's another way of looking at the gods, and thus justifying from a game perspective their avatars, right? Of course, their avatars can manifest and be fought, but if you want to talk about something like God, like the actual creator of the universe, there's no statting it out. There's nothing it's just an abstract notion. So
we in our games we took kind of a cue from some of the stuff that had been published in some of the Dragon articles that talked about the gods of this race, the gods of this race. When they started to put it all together, I think they came up with a really good way of handling it in a fantasy world where you kind of get this feeling like no one god actually created the world, but all the gods sort of carved out their corners. So there's that classic bit between Corellin, Lorathan, and Grumsh where Grumsh is like, well, damn, the elves took the trees and the forests, and the dwarves took the mountains and stuff. Well, I guess I'll make the orcs in the dark places of the world because that's all that's left of me. And you guys shafted me, so I hate you. They just kind of gave each pantheon its own little corner of the world. And like when it came to like human religions, like how we would handle okay, there's a Greco-Roman Empire over there with their Zeusi gods and everything. They had sway in that part of the world. So, but then again, that's individual DMs are just going to cover it however they want anyway. So,
again, multiple planes. Speaking of which, if we're going to be talking high-level campaigns, how can we leave out the Spelljammers and the book of manual, the manual planes books and things like that?
But Spelljammer was written for level 1 and up.
Yeah, I can easily leave out Spelljammers. I don't use them.
No. But I mean, when you really look at what was going out there, those were intended for much higher level campaigns. And those are what I'm referring to. Is going back to that high level campaign. The manual of the planes. You had to be high level to get water breathing or
or going to those planes where your spells got jacked up. Like you're a cleric in the 9 hells. Good luck.
Yeah, exactly. But for help, it's not coming. It's not that the multiple gods really bothered me. It was like, okay, there can be a regional aspect, and then again, depending on which plane you're on, depending on what goes where. I really did like the fact the manual of the planes where they had the different material planes, where some of them had like up to 10th level spells, and some only had, you could cast it to almost first level spells, if that. Different, they really made it very interesting for that aspect of if you just wanted to gate hop. That's what I want to call it. You cast the gate and you just go from material plane to material plane. I thought that actually made it really interesting. You didn't know what kind of world you were going to end up in.
Reading some of the stuff that was written in some of the interviews with Ed Greenwood and stuff, gate hopping was pretty common in older D&D. They used that a lot. And I also think that is also why we saw stats for gods. I mentioned it earlier. A lot of the fiction of the time has god-killing heroes and stuff in some of that sword and sorcery fantasy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm literally going to go out and just smack the god across the face and take his stuff. So that is where they're coming from when they create the game. And of course, they're going to, like, as a lark, give you the stats for all these different gods to beat up. I mean, the most viable ones to actually encounter and beat up are the Arthurian guys and some of the heroes in there. So,
but those were gods; those were all considered heroes.
Yeah.
So that was the interesting part. Is there are instances in almost all mythology where the gods are killed. By whether it's Norse or Greek, by sometimes a mortal. It's interesting in what goes on there, but you had to go through certain things in there to do it. But I think that's part of the, how far do you want to get up there? Was it Bellerophon that took Pegasus to go fly to the to Mount Olympus and gets shot down? The five things?
Plane hopping is definitely, I think, one of their original concepts for high level play is going out into the planes, dealing with the devil. Even if we could take deities and demigods out of the equation, the monster manual has every lord of hell and every demon prince statted up in it.
Yep.
And then Fiend Folio gives you the elemental princes and Lolth and so there's clearly an idea that the planes are supposed to factor into that.
Planescape. This is the whole point of Planescape. Yeah. There's your high level play right there. Play Planescape. If you get to that level where you're going to be able to just walk over the nations of the world, shove their asses to Sigil, and watch them try and realize I'm not as bad an ass as I thought I was. All of a sudden.
And Omen joked around earlier about, sure, you can get to the point where you have Githyanki coming out of the astral plane on their red dragons. That happened in my campaign when we were kids. My freaking barbarians standing in front of the other players' thieves guild at high level, defending the gate against the Githyanki war party that was coming to get back the silver sword that these stupid thieves had pilfered on a little jaunt, and that was some of our high level play.
I
also remember getting locked out by those little bastards and not being allowed back in the stronghold.
I mean, it's not that's the problem. I think that it's part of it is once you do the Githyanki Githzeri and you kill off the queen or whatever she is.
Good luck.
Well, once you kill her off, that's the end of your campaign. Is my point. Because otherwise, your campaigns need to come to an end. I agree with that. They need to come to an end, and there needs to be a final boss to fight, and then say, okay, now we're going to start all over again for something else. And I think that there's that aspect. The problem I think in modern D&D is they want to, and this isn't necessarily true, but before there used to be a lot of downtime. I notice whenever I play, there's almost no downtime. It's usually less than a week. You get back up, and you're playing almost continuously with the same characters over and over.
The healing rules in 5e, for example, do away with that. And I've talked about this before. I mean, there's this weird concept that players have nowadays that the game world, the story stops because the players have to pause to catch the characters have to pause to catch their breath.
Mm-hmm.
And I always use like the Rivendell part from Lord of the Rings. The story didn't stop. The characters didn't stop doing stuff while they're waiting for Frodo to convalesce. We have introspective moments. We have Samwise poking around, looking at the elves. We got some time to get lore and some meeting NPCs. That those healing times in AD&D when you might be in the city for a good week trying to get your hit points back, is when the rest of the players are training, or the wizard's doing research, or you're doing little side adventures with your characters, and you're pulling in your other character that you don't get to play all that often because your main character is on his back for 2 weeks, and that's where your story comes out of the play. And there's the modern thinking that the game stops somehow because your character has to take a respite it's a kind of a modern construct because
that's just something we need to beat out of them. That's all.
Well, all I know is
grab your horse whip.
Our games never stopped just because we had to heal. Yeah.
I'm going to bring the other part is even if they did stop, it's almost continuous. It's like, okay, as soon as you heal, you immediately go back in. There's not this huge gap of time in between where there's, I mean, and I think some of it just comes down to any of us that have actually read books and stuff from what they were pulling from. And, if you go back to the Appendix N, it's not continuous. There's long gaps. It's like,
you can even look at TV. I mean, even when I'm talking to people about this, because this is one of my soapboxy things too. The whole the game doesn't stop. You can actually have slow healing and everything. How many of your favorite episodes of your TV shows, your action TV shows, your investigative TV shows, your procedural TV shows are those side episodes where somebody's getting shot or the death of their significant other, and we have these side stories. Now granted, those are written scripted stories, but those are also things that you can pull into your game. It's just like character death. Sure, the guy died. Now you've got a whole reason to go on a side quest, a high level adventure maybe, to find somebody who can bring him back from the dead. His soul was taken by that demon lord. Damn, we got to go get it back.
Well, I'm going to bring this up as whether it's Conan or anything else, but there was kind of this episodic, contained aspect. But a perfect example is anyone that's watched the series 24. The
real time, yeah.
It's real time for that 24. But guess what? Between seasons,
it's a year and a half.
A year and a half. And I think that's the problem that the players are going, well, what am I doing in that year and a half? Like, well, you tell me what you're doing, and we're going to go work through that.
You're living your fucking life.
Yeah, but you can use blue booking for that, and that's a great thing. You can have fun with it. And one of the things I really like about Against the Dark Lord, speaking of character death, is that Dark Master, there's a thing in there where they literally say, when a character dies, take time in the game for all of the characters to deal with that repercussion of the character's death. And it just brings it in mind of that moment in Lord of the Rings where they're outside of Moria finally, and you've got Boromir going, for mercy's sake, give them a moment. And Aragorn's like, we have to fucking go now.
And a lot of us did play those, but it's nice to see a game actually spell it out. What game was that again?
Here's the thing. You need that drama. And this is why because I see the chat going on about the healing and the short rest and the long rest. When you can heal all your hit points overnight, that drama doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. Or just having to find a safe space to be able to get that rest time can be an adventure. Oh my God, we're being harried by the orcs, but we're wounded. What do? We're running out of food. There's wolves and it's cold outside.
And I don't like to look at those teenagers.
So many players just think they can just call a rest and get it. It's like, no, you got to be somewhere safe.
Yeah, I love fucking with my players when they call a rest.
Well, even with the rest is stay in town. Well, I mean, next time I run, which I've been trying to get people to go together for the problem is you do different games, bad timing. Next time I'm going to do it is you do an adventure, and it's only going to be one adventure per season. That's it.
Oh, so you're talking about Pendragon? Wasn't it Pendragon?
Yeah, Pendragon.
Or that did that.
Pendragon did that. Yeah,
Pendragon,
they did it summer. I think they did it for the summer, and then you had overwinter. That to me, one is it causes the passage of time to occur. And a big thing. That's one. The other part is that, let's be honest, even, unless you are special forces in the modern day, and even then, they still rotate you back home to retrain and everything else. No one is constantly fighting the entire time. You have, even in the middle of a war, you're going to sit back. There's going to be rest times for months on end where it's kind of boring. It's like, okay, what are you doing during this time? What do you want to do? It's like, well, I want to go do this. Okay. And the other part is, when we talk about slow advancement, not only does it slows down also the time in the world. Guess what? Now, even if you advance as fast as what we're talking about, guess what? Now it's been 10 years for you to get up to 10th level. It's not been, in 6 months I got to 10th level because we played all the time. It's like, no, it's slow.
But in modern game design, you're fighting the expectation of the video game player. And that is always going to be the issue because I love Diablo. I'll play Diablo till the cows come home. I even love Diablo 3. I haven't touched 4 yet, but I love it. It's fun. I don't play video games, but I love Diablo. But you're dealing with an entire generation of players now, younger players, the 5e crowd really, who came up on video games. They expect power-ups. They expect to get all this stuff. They expect to be able to quaff a potion and heal. They want that. And the game design has gone that way. And this is, I know we're getting a little off topic, but I'm going to say it. Everyone accused 4E of being a video game. No, 5e is the video game.
I'm
5e is 100% a video game.
okay. Having someone that played
At the same time, I can't blame them. I'm not, that.
No.
Yeah, I mean,
Taste
by all means,
change.
they would be dumb to try and make a new game system for all of us old grumpy grognards, because that's not a viable product.
Okay.
Well, because Sean can't do any more Kickstarters, it's not viable anymore.
Wait a minute. I remember playing the video games from the early 80s. Yes, you did. You quaffed a potion and boom, you're instant healing and you keep on moving forward.
That is true, but we hadn't been spoiled by a generation of that.
Yeah.
In
And
the 80s.
I remember, how many times did we die? How many times did we go to the wrong room and die instantaneously?
Oh yeah. Well, and rage. How many times did we rage over that stuff when it was a stupid? I'm not saying it doesn't, but I'll be fair.
All I know is I still remember my earliest adventure video game and that damn bat stealing my key.
On Atari 2600.
Yep, adventure.
Was that the one where you had to throw your sword at the dragon?
Well, it was also the one that had a glitch in it that could make the game unbeatable too.
Oh well, there was a lot of things about that. Well, I remember playing the old Atari and stuff, and we would go through it, but
we also played outside and used our imaginations. I'm not trying to be generationalist, but
Bard's Tale, Wizardry, where there were no real walls when you went from one side of the map.
Yeah, it looped around. Try mapping that motherfucker.
Yeah. So that was an issue for that one. I remember doing that. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of stuff that when we say, I don't know. I think the problem is that most of the kids who were geek gamers also were like programmers, so they did that. I think that said is, and maybe this has to do a little bit with it, is it has broadened out. But that said is, we're all talking together now. We can still find people who want to play all these games where we couldn't do it previously. 20 years ago, it was hard to find the group that would play whatever game you wanted. Now you can go find people online. You can get them in. I mean, hell, my library has 3 games of D&D going on. I find that I think there's a teenage one. There's a veteran one. There's another one that every soft. And all we were told is that if we want to have a free room, we just have to keep it open to everybody. I said, oh, that's not a problem. But yeah, I think that this is I don't want to say it's just unique to that, because I remember doing the exact same thing when you drink the potion. I think the part of it is that it's the literature also changed. 5e, as I've said, is Harry Potter. People grew up on Harry Potter, and that's what 5e seems to be really focused on, is that group that grew up with Harry Potter. The old D&D seemed to be Michael Moorcock, Dying Earth, Conan, John Carter, that aspect. It's a very different writing style. It's a different expectation.
Real quick here to speak to Manfred.
Yeah.
John's waving. I think it's pumpkin hour.
Oh, is it pumpkin time?
It is.
All right.
Yeah. If you want to say something to Manfred, you're more than welcome.
Oh yeah. With the senseless death back in the day, I think a lot of when people look at older D&D and they're talking about how like quick deaths and seemingly random deaths, older D&D was very much framed as much as it was adventure and characters and role playing, it was still very much a game.
Yes.
When nobody bitches and moans, and I'm not saying you're bitching and moaning, but collectively nobody bitches and moans, and they may, when you're playing shoots and ladders and you land on a shoot. That's just part of the game. Walking into a room, triggering a fireball spell, and losing the entire party is just part of the game. And it was accepted as part of the game back in the day.
I have a caveat for that, though.
Yeah.
In the OSR, I have heard this statement made so many goddamn times, it makes me want to fucking scream. Okay, pardon my French.
Yeah,
I can say it in French if you like, by the way. It's not what's on the sheet, it's what's in you. So then it becomes a test of your ability. So if you die, you failed. Not your character failed, you failed. So now it becomes an ego hit. Yeah. And this pisses me off because I played in the 80s.
Oh,
we didn't play like that.
I am on record as saying that there's 2 OSRs. There's how it actually was and what a lot of people say it was or believe it was.
The idealized fantasy version.
And unfortunately, those guys don't know what they're talking about because it was something different for everybody.
Aren't they the
Even-
Bro SR, Sean? Isn't that what you were talking about?
the
A
Bro
couple weeks ago?
SR.
The Bro SR.
The Bro SR, yeah, I've heard
Yeah,
that
that's
term.
what they're kind of, because even in the Arnis and Gygax days, they accepted that every table, every campaign, you'll see in their articles, oh, in the USS blah blah blah's campaign, they're doing this, that, and the other, and it was just your campaign was your campaign,
Yeah.
and it was,
Yeah.
you know. But anyways, John is trying to go to sleep, so
Yes.
John, dude, are we
Right.
keeping you up? Sorry, buddy.
All right, before we finish, I just want to. We normally have a little bit of a shill and stuff, but when we shill now, I just want you to all just let everyone in chat know what games you've got coming up, and if you've got a channel, what you've got coming up, so you can give a proper shill, a bit more of a shill to usual. So
I'll just go really fast.
Yep.
Because I got to bounce too because I got to prep for my live stream that's coming up tonight.
Okay.
Every other Friday, I run Marvel Saga, Marvel Superheroes Adventure Game, the card version. I run that. Every Monday, I run Legends and Longswords, which is a D6 fantasy game. And starting in 2 weeks on Monday, I'll be doing an alternate Monday Against the Dark Master game as well. And then in August, I've got Marvel Multiverse coming when that releases. On my channel, Bear the Gen X GM. I'm the only one on YouTube.
yep, I already found you and subscribed.
Thank you, sir.
I don't have any games planned, so
I will post the Discord link into the blurb underneath the video once we finished. So it's in the blurb for almost all of my videos. Just click that and it'll take you straight to the channel. But I haven't posted it in yet for this one.
My channel
John, do
is.
you mind if I throw my link in the chat? Is that okay for you, sir?
That's absolutely fine. Yeah. If you want
All right, I'll
to
throw that in the chat.
shill the channel.
I guess Bear does actually throw it in there because I know sometimes if you put links, it won't allow you.
Oh, that's right. I can't do it. I'll throw it in the private chat here, and if one of you who has a moderator status can go ahead and paste it, that would be great. If
I'm
not,
actually
oh
gonna have
well.
to log
Bear
off
the
real
Gen X
quick here.
GM. Find me.
There it is.
All right, see you later.
All right.
I know Sean and I talk a lot about the theory on things. And, what do we like? Well, John, I will say as much as if you like the Conan game, go buy it now because it's on sale for like half off or less for some of the books.
Oh, the 2D20 Modifius one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as of June 30th, they can't sell it anymore.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, they lost the license. So.
Well, guys, thanks for having me on. I'm going to bounce too. Peace, love, geek, and I gave you guys the private link for the live stream tonight. If any of you, Sean, and Omanal, you want to stop by and say hi, you're more than welcome.
Hey, Bear.
Yeah.
What time zone are you in?
I'm Eastern.
Okay, all right. That's what I was just checking.
So 8 p.m. Eastern, I'll be going live on my channel. We got a couple of people showing up tonight. We might have Mr. Welch tonight. He may be able to make it. So that's awesome. Anyway, thanks a lot, John. Always a pleasure to see you, sir. Always a pleasure to be here with you. Take care. Bye, guys.
See you around.
Cheers. For those who aren't aware, my Friday stream won't happen this week because I'm going to the UK Games Expo. I will be going meeting up with Gingerbeard, and we'll probably be having a pint and a good old chinwag and browsing through the various bring and buy stuff that's there, the secondhand stuff, and having a look at various games that are on offer. I will be taking my phone with me, and I'll be recording bits and bobs to throw up on YouTube to just sort of make you all jealous or laugh at us or whatever.
Hey, John, if you're gonna do that, you got to have like a 3-minute live stream showing you your little unboxing of your haul. You know, like with Gingerbeard, like here's my haul, and it just... we could
certainly do that because there is a room there where everyone sort of sits down and pours through all of their stuff while having some food or whatever. I think we'll almost certainly do that for a bit. So yeah, I think that's a good idea. But yeah, there will be various. I'm not sure I'll be able to live stream from my phone properly, but I'll certainly be able to broadcast live.
Sure. That's what I meant. It's just broadcast, not so that you have to. Not that we say anything, but just more of like, hey guys, I'm just here for this, and here's Gingerbeard, and he's a real human being.
But it'll be nice to meet Ginger because we've been playing together now for about 18 months in various games, and
I thought you already knew him.
No. I met him on a different Discord, and we've played in lots of games together now, and I thoroughly enjoy the way he plays, and I think he enjoys the games I run. So
Gingerbeard's hilarious. Anyone that actually gets a chance to run with Gingerbeard, do so. You'll laugh so hard.
He sits there quietly for 20 odd minutes without saying anything, and then he comes out with something that absolutely kills everybody at the table. He's that sort of player.
Oh, it was just the he well, I mean, after playing his Call of Cthulhu, Gingerbeard is a pleasure to play with because he'll just come up with some of the weirdest comments, and they're in character too. So
yeah. So, have you shilled your channel yet, Mage? Did you?
No, not yet. But most people here know me. But Mage's Musings, the game's coming up. I've got OSE, Old School Essentials, on Friday, which will eventually be recapped. I'm about 7 recaps behind. But what I do, for those who don't know, is I play the game just naturally, and then I write up a recap, and I recap it using little Order of the Stick minis. I've got a whole selection of what I call review caps, where I also review the modules that they're playing through as they play through it. So bit by bit, the playthrough that happens. And I got my AD&D game on Sunday, which it's Team Good. They will eventually be taking over the Night Below storyline once they finish their current mission. So that's the plan for that. Until then, the Night Below recaps go on hiatus. So yeah, if you enjoy game recaps, please come check me out. Mage's Musings. I'm approaching the vaunted 1,000 subscribers mark.
And the incoming giveaway.
And the giveaway, yes. Grumpy Old Slan sent me a care package of stuff to give away, so that'll be announced when I hit 900, and then 950 I'll announce the big final one with plus I'll have figured out by then how I'm going to do the draw.
Excellent. I'm running Call of Cthulhu tomorrow night on the Discord, part 2 of the Blood Red Fez, and I think I'm going to be playing in a game next Monday. Apart from that, it's just Games Expo. I've got to work next Monday, which during the daytime, so that's when I script videos, but I can't do that because I've had the weekend off work, and my colleague who's covering for me this weekend, I'm covering for her on Monday. So it's going to be Tuesday before I even think about any other videos and stuff. But anyhow, I'm just going to also subscribe to Elfbait as well. Elfbait has a channel, and we've been having some discussions on there. Both myself and Mage played in one of Elfbait's games for the first time on Monday, and it was very good. We had a lot of fun. That was a Call of Cthulhu game. The dice favoured us, but only when I got up to make my dinner. I got up to make my dinner. It all looked horrible. I had to go and quickly make some dinner. And when I came back about 10 minutes later, with my dinner, it was all over. We'd won. Because suddenly people have been rolling these insane critical hits on Call of Cthulhu and doing these mad impale damage. So it's like work sometimes.
So John, I'm going to ask you a quick question because I didn't quite pick it up. Is Saxia still running his Shadow of the Demon Lord, or did he have to put that on pause? Because I know he's really big.
He's had to put it on pause because he's had to step in and take on the management role at work. He's had some work issues for the last month or so, and he's had to fill in as an acting manager there. And so he doesn't have time to run the midweek games at the moment. It's why he's not on the stream tonight, because of his work and stuff. So Saxius, come back as soon as you're ready. But Saxius, he'll play. He played in our game on Saturday. But anyway, cheers. Thank you all, and thank you for chat. Chat's been absolutely fantastic tonight. Thank you for all of the donations.
On fire.
I just need to show I am currently, and where is it? It should be on my arm somewhere. I wrote the other one, the Geeklings. That's the one that won eventually. So there we go. Temporary tattoos that will scrub off in the morning before I go to work. You hope.
Or you're wearing gloves and a long sleeve shirt, when you're going to work.
I'm just in a t-shirt at work, so I might actually be there serving customers with nerd scrawled across my knuckles. But anyway, chat, you've been fantastic tonight, and everyone involved in the discussion. Cheers. Thank you all.
Good night, everyone.
Cheers. See you all soon.